What's going on? 6 o'clock. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I am Robert Walsh. 4 new head coaches were introduced yesterday, starting with the Cowboys. Brian Schottenheimer, who becomes the 10th head coach in Cowboy history. Jerry Jones noted that it was a huge risk to hire a 39-year-old with no head coaching experience, but Brian is the son of legendary coach Marty Schottenheimer. In New York, Aaron Glenn was introduced as the new head coach. When asked about Aaron Rodgers, he said that they will look at every position on the team, including quarterback. And after a year off, 73-year-old Pete Carroll is back in the NFL with the Raiders. He said the organization will lean heavily on Tom Brady when searching for the next franchise quarterback. And Jaguars introduced their new head coach, Liam Cohen, who was the OC for the Bucs last year, said the opportunity to coach the Jaguars was one that he could not turn down. For all your foundation repair and your waterproofing needs, you got to go to USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Tuesday morning on 104.5 The Zone, getting started on RKW. Ramon, Kayla, and Will, 615-737-1045. The next step in the NFL draft process has officially begun, and down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl, they say the draft starts in Mobile. Well, I guess that means the draft starts really for us as well here in Nashville. Ramon Foster is there. We will catch up with him coming up at 7:20. VolQuest's Awesome Price at 8:20. And Richard Hendrix of the SEC Network talks SEC hoops in hour 4 at 9:20. In studio, you've got myself, Will Bowling, Kayla Anderson, and Robert Walsh. It is Tuesday, January the 28th. And Kayla, I guess the NFL draft is here. Good morning.
It is. Good morning to you.
In some ways.
In some ways. The countdown has began, and I'm excited because I think this is the time of the year. I really feel like I'm going back to my homework days where, I'm getting into the thick of the index book and really looking at the descriptions, and it's fun. It's like you're studying all over again, and I kind of miss those days as much as I still have nightmares about some of my college classes.
I was going to say, you miss homework?
It's weird. I miss prepping for certain tests that I actually enjoyed taking. Not math, Will. Not math. That is not included in that.
Yep.
But this is the time of year. It is kind of neat to feel like after you've done all the research, you really do know a lot. And you know a lot about these players once you hit the draft. And you're hearing the names called and you're like, oh, yeah, I remember this guy, from the Senior Bowl doing my research there. And then when you get one that lands with the Titans, that's even more exciting because you really feel like you've done all the work. You've heard all the analysts. Ramon's down there. Zach's down there. So it'll be exciting over the next few weeks to see how we break all these guys down.
Well, we are dividing and conquering. Like we said, Ramon will join us at 7:20. We will check in with him daily, at least once, every day that he is down there. Of course, football and other F words, and Zach Lyons and Stody Keeley as well. But it is nice to break down players in practice jerseys and their own helmets. I don't know what the cool thing is about seeing a lot of players play in their own helmets against each other. But that is the aesthetic moment that tells me the NFL draft process is beginning.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We had a little bit of it with the Shrine Bowl that came first, and I know we've had some great coverage with local people down there. Teron Davenport doing a great job, Jimmy Wyatt. Now it's the Senior Bowl, and, Will, we've been down there. We've experienced it. It is neat to see all those different representations of schools and going out there to, when it's all said and done, up their stock. And a lot of guys are able to do it at a place like the Senior Bowl. I've told this story many times, but if you're listening for the first time today, Terry McLaurin's a perfect example of that. At Ohio State, he was probably the number 3-4 receiver when he was there because they had so much talent. He went and he balled out at the Senior Bowl, and, Will, his stock rose from there, and y'all know what he is now.
Well, more recently, Bo Nix.
Absolutely.
Last season was significant. Some quarterbacks down there we'll talk about this morning that we have watched a lot of in the SEC who are particularly interesting prospects. But those just the headliners. There is lots to get into as the draft really picks up starting this week, which is a great time. Titans did make some news yesterday, making a number of staff changes. We knew about John Fossil, who was going to come in as the special teams coach. We did not know whether or not Colt Anderson would be retained as a part of that move. He is officially out. Kayla, you surprised at all by that?
Not really. And I have heard that there was an opportunity for him to stay, but he clearly decided to go elsewhere and maybe explore some other opportunities. So it doesn't surprise me for the fact that, Will, I really do believe that they needed to make some sort of a change on their staff. And I don't think, and now it's proven, that it was going to be just one. But I think that was the most obvious one when it came down to it. And I like Colt, and I wish him the very best. I think he is a really smart mind, and he's played the game, and now he has a little experience. The special teams did improve down the stretch, but when it's all said and done, I think this team knows it needs to get a lot better, and especially in that category. And you really can't get mad at hiring a guy like John Fossil? John Fossil.
John Fossil,
yep. Yeah. You can't get mad at that type of hire when it comes to an upgrade. So not surprised, Will, at all by that.
Certainly happy they are able to bring in Fossil, who is known in NFL circles as one of the veterans, one of the best. And I think for a staff that probably needed more experience in important positions last season, they get that. In year two under Brian Callahan. I think the harsh thing about it is, though, that special teams improved over the course of the season more so than maybe any other phase of the game. And the guy that was the coordinator of the one unit that actually got better from week 1 to week 18 is the only one that's out.
Yeah, and Will, I know that there are people out there saying that this was strictly a Brian Callahan decision. I don't know if I'd agree with that.
Really?
I'll just say that.
Interesting.
I think that there is still a question of if there was involvement higher up in kind of coming down and saying we need to make that change. And so just something, to think about when it comes to next year, and decisions need to be made from the football people. That's just one of the things that you have to really hope changes, is if that is something that has been happening with, hey, you need to make this change from up top, you hope that it in some way it parcels out to let the football people do the football things, i.e. all your new GM assistants that you have in here.
Other changes of the staff yesterday, the Titans promoted VFL Luke Stocker to tight ends coach. And also announced the hiring of Tony Oden, passing game coordinator and quarterbacks coach, along with a few other changes as assistant position coaches as well. So Oden has been around, 19 years of NFL coaching experience, an additional 8 years in the college ranks as well. But you go down the list of NFL defensive backs that he has coached, it is impressive. More recently, Sauce Gardner in New York with the Jets, Xavier Howard with the Dolphins in Miami, Darius Slay in Detroit, Darrelle Revis in Tampa, and Roman Harper, another SEC product in New Orleans. Raina Stewart is brought in, former Titan, former Houston and Tennessee Oiler, and Titans assistant coach, who most recently was with Fossil in Dallas. So he comes in replacing Anthony Levine as that process continues. But Justin Alton out at tight ends coach, Luke Stocker promoted. I know that's someone that staff has thought very highly of as an assistant position coach, and really kind of a no-brainer to just promote him.
Yeah, VFL, shout out there. And I have enjoyed seeing what he's done with the tight ends. And I know he hadn't had the official title until now, but just really watching him at practices with that tight ends group, just love always the interaction that I see with him. I also see how the players react to Luke Stocker, and also not too far removed from playing days. Like, he is still rather young and relatable, but obviously has had some experience now and enough to earn this new title. So really excited for him. That's the guy I know the most that's been climbing up throughout the past couple of years in the Titans circle. So really excited he gets the opportunity there.
And Mike Vrabel potentially getting the band back together in New England. That includes Titans cornerbacks coach Chris Harris. It was kind of odd this year. He missed multiple weeks.
Yep.
But we don't know the reasoning for that. We don't know if that was a factor in the decision to not bring him back. But I would argue it's probably not shocking considering he wasn't there for a lot of this season, Harris.
Well, I'll share something that I just kind of saw when that whole thing went down. And Chris Harris, very nice guy. Spoke with him a couple of times, before last season even, and then he had the little leave of absence, and we never knew, like you said, what that was. I will say, though, when he came back, there was a different demeanor about Chris. He was a little more reserved because we are able to speak to assistants every other Thursday. Something just seemed to be a little bit off, and I don't know exactly what that was. That's just observation on my part. I'm not saying there was anything wrong, but it was a little different once he came back from that leave of absence. So I'm actually kind of not surprised that was a change. Well,
sure. Well, one thing's for sure, Brian Callahan's not afraid to make changes. And that was one of the concerns I think fans had when Colt Anderson was kept as long as he was. Powder dry, patience, and changes were made.
Yeah.
There you go. 615-737-1045 is our number. Coming up, we'll talk with Ramon in just over an hour from Mobile at the Senior Bowl as practices get started later today and as Titans Radio begins to meet with players down there in Mobile. 820 Austin Price of AllQuest and On3 and Richard Hendrix of SEC Network, who is a friend of the show, local in Nashville, does a great job on television covering SEC hoops. He will join the show at 9:20. Pretty big basketball game tonight. Tennessee, Kentucky. As Tennessee looks to get back in the win column and Kentucky looks to end a 2-game losing streak. But coming up next, I'm curious where fans are about the new Titans organizational structure. As negative as the reaction was when Rand Carthon got fired, have the Titans won you back over that these moves were for the best? One national writer says yes. We'll dive into that coming up next. Hey, it's Will Bowling. Is your water heater not heating? Maybe your sink is leaking or the drain is clogged. Well, available 24/7, 365. Our expert friends at Lee Company have you covered for all of your plumbing needs. And right now, you can enjoy $30 off a plumbing service call for a limited time. You just got to contact Lee Company today at 615-567-1000. Or go online to leecompany.com for an appointment to take care of your home's plumbing from top to bottom. Again, that's $30 off a plumbing service call for a limited time when you call the pros at Lee Company. With over 80 years of experience, Lee Company has been trusted since 1944. They've got 14 community locations in Tennessee, Kentucky, and Alabama, and with over 1,000 vehicles in their fleet. The good part about that is you call them, they can be there ready to help you fast. 615-567-1000 or go online to leecompany.com to get $30 off your next plumbing service call. That's online at leecompany.com. Lee Company, all you need. Tuesday morning at RKW 104.5 The Zone. Kayla Anderson, Will Bowling, and Robert Walsh hanging out with you. 615-737-1045. Many of you did not want the Titans to fire Rand Carthon. And there was as strong of negative reaction, I would say, Kayla, to that decision as any decision the Titans have made in quite some time. I'm curious if people have now been won over by the new organizational structure, by Mike Borgonzi, by a couple of the assistant general manager moves that they've made. We're going to get into this Albert Breer piece at SI.com about the belief that a lot of these assistant GMs have in this new project and picking the Titans over other opportunities. Kayla, I'm really curious because I do feel like, unlike with the Brian Callahan coaching move, when the Titans kind of did something bold, fired Mike Vrabel, and then went for a largely unproven commodity that maybe wasn't at the top of a lot of people's lists in Brian Callahan, it does feel like this time they did restructure with a guy in Mike Borgonzi who was very coveted and with some assistant general managers who have done this job before. It seems like they've upgraded, even though a lot of us didn't even want them to upgrade at all to begin with.
Yeah, and it's really, I think, a process of getting things to work sometimes, especially in the NFL and where money is involved in terms of an owner, and structure might not always work out the first, the second time. And I think that's why it's fair for people to be cautiously optimistic about the situation, because we aren't the owner. We don't understand at that level what really is going on behind the scenes. I wish I were a fly on the wall sometimes. And it hasn't worked out for the past couple of years in terms of what they were looking to do. And I think now that you look at this structure, Will, I agree. It seems to be more of a kind of just blatant, this is what it is. This is who reports to who. However, we've heard from all parties and Chad Brinker and Mike Borgonzi in terms of, even though Chad Brinker has final say, we all are going to work together to agree on those picks or those free agent signings. And so it does seem to have everybody coming out and saying, hey, we're going to work together. It is teamwork here. And I understand that's some of the things that have been said in the past, but it is nice to have a guy like Mike Borgonzi that you've known. He's been in one organization for 16 years. He has a lot of respect around the league. The Kansas City Chiefs going for a three-peat now. I mean, need I explain anything more for that? Now you got a guy in Ziegler coming in who is also renowned around the league. He has experience, but he knows exactly what his role is, right? And that's to support Borgonzi. So all of these guys now look to Chad as the person who has the final say, but I honestly think that Chad is kind of going to do all the other operational stuff that goes around. The scouting, the free agent picks, those things. I think that is strictly up to Borgonzi and Ziegler. And yes, Brinker will have final say, but I think you have two guys now that are going to work together, and it's clear what their job and task is, Will.
Sure. So Albert Breer at SI.com writes about assistant general manager Dave Ziegler and mentions that as Mike Borgonzi was becoming a stronger candidate for general manager jobs, these two are always tied together. And Albert Breer writes, these sort of arrangements are pretty common among coaches and execs in planning for the possibility of landing jobs. Coach Mack has told us about that. When you walk into an interview as a head coach, as a general manager, you have a binder that you have put together for months to prepare for that opportunity. You know guys who would tentatively be able to join you on your staff, whether that's as a head coach or as a general manager. So no surprise that Dave Ziegler was on Mike Borgonzi's list. Albert Breer writes, at the 11th hour, though, the New York Jets also checked in on Dave Ziegler. And Darren Mogi, the new general manager who spent 4 years with Ziegler in Denver during the Tim Tebow and Peyton Manning eras, checked in. Albert Breer writes at SI.com, in the end, Ziegler decided to push his deal with the Titans over the goal line. In doing so, he affirmed some things that Tennessee tried to establish in introducing Borgonzi as GM. So first and foremost, Albert Breer writes, while President of Football Operations Chad Brinker retains contractual final say, the Titans emphasized Borgonzi will run all facets of roster building. Quote, I will pick the players. We knew that. Well, we've talked with both Brinker and with Borgonzi about that. But Albert Breer takes it a step further and says Ziegler's decision makes it two guys who know Brinker well, who trust it'll be that way. Since Ziegler chose to pursue not to pursue a number 2 job in New York, that essentially means he's taking a number 2 job here. I think that's a pretty fair assumption. You wouldn't turn down a number 2 job in New York for what is kind of a number 3 job in Nashville. So Albert Breer says that a guy with options who'd been a GM joined the Titans is an endorsement of their newfangled model. The idea is for Brinker to free guys such as Borgonzi and Ziegler up to be GM and assistant GM in a more traditional way where they can focus on putting the team together and Brinker can focus on the overall operation. It is hard for me to really feel as negative today as I did the day Rand Carthon was fired because it feels like the Titans upgraded. It looks that way on paper. Granted, Rand Carthon was the Mike Borgonzi of 2 years ago. So we went through this process saying a lot of the same things about Rand that we are right now about Mike Borgonzi. We just don't have the stench of 2 bad seasons attached to Borgonzi. You have the new car smell that's attached to Mike Borgonzi. But I don't blame anyone for starting to feel won over a little bit because this organization didn't do this after they fired Mike Vrabel. They went with a very unknown commodity. This time, Kayla, it does feel like there are a lot of known commodities and experienced people in this business that are coming in to manage this.
And maybe the Titans, when they look back at it, kind of punch themselves in the knee and say, oh, maybe we should have really thought about this a little bit harder when we went in and decided to do things quickly with Rand Carthon. And again, I still don't think Rand Carthon should have been fired. Let me make that clear, okay? However, I feel like it was a more rushed process. It did feel like they were looking for somebody that hadn't had maybe a lot of experience, but had a lot of good things that have been said about him around the league. He, came from the San Francisco 49ers organization that we know the success that front office has. But Rand just doesn't have as much experience as Mike Borgonzi, plain and simple, right? And so maybe they look back at that and say, we wish we would have taken more time to find a structure like this. Now, that's why I use the 2 words cautiously optimistic, though, Will, because we've gotten excited about things in the past with this organization, whether it be draft picks, free agent picks, upper management moves. So let's keep our powder dry on that. But it does seem that if you're going to have a guy like Ziegler to come here and choose this over another place, something's got to be painted right in that front office. Something's got to be laid out enough, I should say, for him to believe that this really is going to work and that Chad is, for the most part, going to keep his hands out of most of the roster moves and just be dealing with the analytics and the overall operation, which I do truly feel at this point, that's what we've been sold. And you're right. Now we got to see it.
I do think it's interesting, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. Have you been won over by the Titans organization? 615-737-1045, especially if you were someone who did not like the move. Are you still in that camp? Or do you feel like you are more optimistic today than you were a week ago about the new organizational structure? 615-737-1045. I just feel like this organization has lost the blind benefit of the doubt that these things are just going to come together. So I think a lot of us now, like you said, are always going to be in wait and see mode until they win us back. We talked about it yesterday on the 4-year anniversary of Tennessee hiring Josh Heupel. I think a lot of us as Tennessee fans were in that camp. There was a lot to like about Josh Heupel, but after being burned by Jeremy Pruitt and being burned by Butch Jones and being burned by, time and time again, you had to have that trust be earned back. Mm-hmm. I think that's where a lot of people are with the Titans today, despite all of the good things that you hear, and I think the good decisions they've made. You've got to earn the trust back with this fan base. What I think is tricky about all this is they could have done all these things with Rain Carthon as the GM. They could have sold that this is a rebuild. They could have sold you that this was draft, develop, retain. Because a year ago, Chad Brinker told us that he and Rand were totally aligned on that. Mm-hmm. So I think that is the tricky part, is I like a lot of the messaging and a lot of the philosophical shifts that have happened. Draft, develop, retain is as clear of a plan and a patient plan as I think we've had from this organization in quite some time, Caleb, because they did not want to admit it was a rebuild. They're finally admitting that they are rebuilding. Okay, well, you could have done that with Rain Carthon in the building as well. So for me, that's why it's hard for me to be totally won over at this point.
People got, I can't say the word, but people got, hurt in this process in terms of their livelihood, their job opportunities, plain and simple, Will, because I don't think that maybe things were done as detailed as they should have been. And you're exactly right with the selling like this team is going to go and compete this last year, when really it probably should have been this team is going to continue to rebuild. Because I think what happened, that there was false hope kind of inserted in us. And I'm one of those people that felt the false hope last year with all the free agent signings and the marketing and messaging that was put out there. And I understand you got to sell tickets, but there's a way to be a little more transparent and say it is a rebuild. We'll wait and see. We're seeing that now, a year later, after people lost, jobs. And you kind of hope that that is a learning situation for this organization. So far, that's what they've been preaching. This is a rebuild. It's going to take time. And CR, I hope you're really listening, because in no way are we trying to not stick up for you. I'm on the path of I need to really see it to have me convinced that this has changed. So on the
YouTube chat, commenter says Titan sponsored radio trying to sell us just like we were sold 2 years ago. No, because of what happened 2 years ago, I actually view a lot of this differently. Mm-hmm. Because they lost the benefit of the doubt.
Absolutely.
They punted after 2 years.
Yeah. And look, it is what it is right now. This is all we have to work with. The hirings that they've made, they're good hirings on paper. Let's not argue with that. Mike Borgonzi was one of the better general managers out there, or, potential general manager hires out there. And that's coming from people that have worked with him. You can see the product with Kansas City.
Right.
But now, he has to come here, guys, and he has to make it relevant for the Tennessee Titans. That's what matters to these fans.
I think if you're a fan today, you can take solace in one thing, and that is the fact that Amy Adams-Strunk is investing a significant amount of resources in bringing in football people into the organization. What that means, time will tell. But there is a significant amount of money and resources being put into this front office when you bring in Reggie McKenzie, Dave Ziegler, Mike Borgonzi, and totally redo all of this while still paying John Robinson, Mike Vrabel, and Rain Carthon. This idea the Titans are cheap and that Amy is not willing to spend to improve things, that's out the window. I think that's the only thing we really know today. We don't know if it's going to work because we thought it was going to work with Rain Carthon, and we don't know. It's difficult to project if front office people who've never done the job before can rise to the occasion and figure out how to do it. We do know there's a lot of resources being invested in the people they do believe it at this point. Let's go to Mike in Cleveland, 615-737-1045. Good morning, Mike.
Hey, yo, what's up, y'all? Good morning. How
What's
y'all
up?
feeling?
Good. How are you? You put some pep in that step. What's going on?
Man, it's Tuesday. You know what I'm saying?
It's
Hump Day Eve. It's Hump Day Eve. It ain't Thursday yet. You feel me? Mm-hmm. But yeah, man. I mean, okay. So look, this is how I'm looking at it. This is how I feel about it. I'm not sold. I mean, y'all just said everything, just about everything I was gonna say. I'm far from sold. I'm a little more interested. It's gonna be hard to say if I'm gonna be fully invested. I think the expectations that I had going into the season, as far as like being patient, those expectations are are still there. I'm not like, oh yeah, we about to get the number 1 draft pick and we about to go, be in the playoffs. No, I'm not there. But I am a little bit more like I said, interested as far as there's more experience in the front office than there was before. It seemed like everybody in NFL got caught up in like that Sean McVay, young, new type of way of thinking as far as football. And now we're kind of going back to, I guess you could say, traditional way of thinking with a lot of experience. Kind of gives me like that Coach Saban coaching staff vibe, where it's like maybe you didn't work as a GM here or there, but come be part of our staff and let's build something great together, if that makes any sense. But the other thing, I just, like you said earlier, Kay, I would love to be a fly on the wall and to know what Brinker saw or whoever in the organization saw with Rand this past year that made them feel like, okay, we got to tear this down and do it this way. Because, right now it seems like Brinker, he's dubbed the snake. He took the hit. He's sitting on the grenade, ready for it to explode. And if this don't work out, let's be real, it's his job. He's going to have to go. So, and he might have hired his replacement. So let's just see what happens. But, I just wonder, what did they see from Rand that just made them say, let's blow it up, and Brinker's going to take all the hit, So, yeah, doses.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Appreciate the call. I think the only thing about the Saban staff comparison is that a lot of those coaches won championships or had more success. So comparing Dave Ziegler and Reggie McKenzie to Nick Saban bringing in Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian, Bill O'Brien, is that those guys were better record-wise, right? Like as GMs, Dave Ziegler and Reggie McKenzie combined for a 54-96 record.
Right.
As general managers. That's not to say that they're not qualified to do this job. I think they are qualified to be assistant general managers, but the idea that they're like these championship coaches and elite coaches that are now joining you as analysts the way Saban did, I wouldn't agree with that comparison.
Yeah, no, and it's on such a different level with this being the NFL and that college, and also this being the front office and that being coaches, right? Yeah. I get, though, what he's trying to say. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think one thing, too, Will, that is the biggest question. We have to make sure that this works. So that's one thing. But also that these guys work well together, because you're right. They're bringing different things from all over, and not all of them have been successful in terms of just the record point of view, but they all kind of have around the league a lot of people that say good things about them. They have respect around the league. So all of that comes with the, positivity that they bring in, like, hey, we can do this. They're taking this job for a reason because they feel like they can put their names on an organization in terms of turning it around. That's what I truly feel like a lot of these guys think they can do. But can they all work together to get it done? That's the question that has to be answered.
Open to your comments, 615-737-1045. Have the Titans won you over? Do you feel like they made the right move now to restructure the organization around Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker? 615-737-1045, our number. Coming up, with Kansas City making another Super Bowl, though, are they your most hated villain in sports? And if not, who is? We'll dive into some of those as well coming up next.
Hey, it's Kayla Anderson with my friends at We Grow Hair. Look, I've told you about my hair growth journey goes all the way back to 2024, and I've come a long way. It's helped me really boost my confidence. When I looked in this chat several months ago, I could see the thinning in the area around my temples. That has all grown back thanks to my friends at We Grow Hair. Look, they do everything when it comes to your hair growth journey because we're all different. And if you're looking to do something new this year, get your confidence back, this is the way to do it. I had PRP treatments. Those help hair growth in 2 to 3 months. You can also go in for their Artist Robotic FUE procedure. That is going to be Regrow Hair's hair density hair transplant that's going to give you 2 times more hair in just one procedure if you want to go down that road. Also, a little bit easier, the laser treatments, you can go in there, you're under the red light for about 30 minutes, you pop out, and in about 3 months, you're going to see your hair grow back. They have done so much for me, and hopefully they can do that for you in the new year. All you got to do, give them a call, 615-376-6010. They've got over 30 years of experience, so give them a call for your free consultation today. It's 615-376-6010, or simply go to wegrowhair.com.
RKW on 104.5. The Zone continues. Wrapping up hour one. Ramon Foster will check in from Mobile at the Senior Bowl. Coming up for the first time this week down there in a half hour. 615-737-1045, the number in the meantime. So with the Kansas City Chiefs making another Super Bowl, Kayla, I feel like they have risen to Brady and Patriots level national hate. I'm curious, though, if they are the hated villain for people. Well, we've asked the question on Twitter this morning at Ramon Kayla Will. Who is your most hated villain, either team or player, in sports? Do you have one that stands out?
Yeah, I do. And I get recency bias.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I get recency bias because right now what's going on with Kansas City, it is in our face a lot, whether it be commercials or them just winning or Taylor Swift, whether you like her or not. It is all over the place. So I get it. And I don't disagree with you guys who think they may be the biggest villains right now. But when it's all said and done, for me, I will stay in the NFL. And it is definitely Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. For me, that era of Bill Belichick, the winning is one thing, right? Led the Patriots to 6 Super Bowl victories. Led the Patriots to 7 divisional titles, 11 consecutive titles from 2009 to 2019, playoff appearances. But the biggest thing with me, you guys, is the winning wore on me, but also it was just the way that organization ran itself. And it's just buttoned up, like wouldn't let us in. Tom Brady was kind of just like the robotic Tom Brady there under Bill Belichick. You know, Bill barely mumbling out sentences when he would step up to the podium. It was all just part of like that whole act. And also, let's not forget about Spygate, Deflategate. They had all those things that went along with it, Will.
Yeah, for sure. I think there is a lot of revisionist history because I do agree with you that people are starting to equate Kansas City to that level of hatred, but we don't really hate the people involved in Kansas City, I think, as much as we did the boring Tom Brady, you know, the mean Tom Brady. Maybe not mean, it's probably not the right word, but you know what I mean,
Stoic.
Right? Like, I think we forget how much we all hated Tom Brady because of the Tampa Bay Tom experience. Because he got a lot more human and a lot more likable through that we forget just how awful that guy was when he was in New England. And it's crazy. Like, for as much grief as Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, I think rightfully get for, you know, sometimes the way they complain to refs and the way they carry themselves in the field. Like, Travis Kelce was asked about Josh Allen after the game on Sunday in the AFC Championship, and he said, I bleeping love that guy.
Yeah.
He's one of the most awesome competitors I've gone against. I have so much respect for him. I'd rather play him in the Super Bowl, but we can't. So AFC Championship it is. It's not totally the refs' fault that the Chiefs have won 17 one-score games in a row, right? Like, they just kind of have that it factor. And they're a very well-built team. And Andy Reid's a likable guy.
Absolutely.
He's the jolly big red giant. Like, he's you know, fun enough.
He's different from Bill Belichick. Let's just say that.
Right. As tired as I am of Kansas City, I don't think it's quite on Belichick Patriot level. Honestly, it's topical today because of who's playing basketball.
Oh, yeah.
For me, it was John Calipari, the World Wide West, and all the one-and-dones at Kentucky. For a long time, that was my most hated team ever in sports. And I do think it's funny for a lot of people that grow up in this part of the country, and I think in Tennessee specifically, we had to go up against a lot of the established villains in sports. Like, we had the Ravens and the Colts. Villain is a strong word, but like, we had to go up against established powers. Like, the Preds from day one had the Red Wings, who were legendary. The Blackhawks, who have had a ton of success. Not now, thankfully, but have had a ton of success. The Titans had the Ravens and the Colts. The Vols had Alabama football and Kentucky basketball. Like, you go down the list, it's like, man, I grew up hating a lot of the iconic teams. Like the Braves for me, and the Philadelphia Phillies when they were really good, and they're pretty good now too. But for me, it was a very, very openly cheating Kentucky basketball team who could never be touched. And thankfully now they're so bad, John Calipari is in his new regime. I don't really have to hate him. And Rick Barnes kind of humanized him for me a little bit too because they were so close. But pre-Rick Barnes, Tennessee versus Kentucky, like under Bruce Pearl and Konza Martin, I hated those Kentucky teams so much.
Yeah, and you, like you said,
much.
you lived it, you saw it, like you were a fan of Vols, so you were in the same conference. And I get that too, though, because it's a national brand. So it's not just like, they're in our conference, I'm perturbed by them.
The brand.
No, everybody was perturbed by them. And I love this one in the F&M Bank chat. Graham Stewart says, UConn women's basketball is my number one villain.
It's a great pick.
I'm with you. And that still could be a lot of people's number one villain.
Yeah, Gino Auriemma, if you're talking sitting coaches, might be number one on that list for me. Leaving Candace Parker off the Olympic team, that's all you need to be on that list for me. No doubt.
I would also say really quick, Will, because we are baseball people, I do roll my eyes every time and someone brings up the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, I love Mookie Betts, and he's a product of Nashville, and I root for Mookie Betts, and I like Freddie Freeman. But overall, the Los Angeles Dodgers make me roll my eyes because they literally pay for their entire roster.
Yeah, and they're probably single-handedly going to bring a lockout in the sport.
Yep.
Because other owners are going to say, this isn't fair, other than Steve Cohen and the Mets. I think it's a good one. And the other one I would have said in baseball is early 2000s Yankees.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of you of a certain age will say those Yankees teams with Alex Rodriguez and Derek Jeter and Jorge Posada.
For sure.
And Roger Clemens and Joe Torre, like those teams were very easy to hate.
Exactly.
Very easy to hate.
You just named some guys Alex Rodriguez.
Yeah, I'm a lot more awake and my skin is crawling a lot more than it was before we started this discussion. Let's go to Braden in Shelbyville, sports villains this morning here on RKW. What's up, Braden?
Good morning, guys. How you doing?
Good.
Good deal. Yeah, so the Chiefs, I mean, they're not as hated or annoying as the Patriots. I think people are just kind of annoyed with the redundancy of them making it every year. But for me, Kayla, you just hit on it, the Dodgers. Oof. I cannot stand the way props to them for having more money than everybody else, but every time you look up, they're signing somebody for $1.7 trillion, and It's like, where is this money coming from? And another thing I don't get they're allowed to do is all these big contracts, they're deferring it. So all the payments are in 2035. It's not going to happen. But just say the organization, something happened, they went under. What's going to happen then? I mean, it's not fair. The Braves are loaded, you would think, and then you look at the Dodgers and it's like, maybe we're not loaded.
I know.
And I hate them. Go Braves, go Vols. Kentucky sucks. Have a good day.
Braden,
Thanks,
Braden and I totally aligned on our sports fandom. Braden, we'll take down your number. Let's grab drinks.
It's a good name, too.
Totally with you. A Big Orange Mac on Twitter gives my other answer I was thinking about giving and says, it will forever be Darth Visor Steve Spurrier for me.
Oh. Have I told you my Steve Spurrier story real quick?
I don't think you have.
Okay, it's the old ball coach, right? We were at some event in Hoover when all the coaches come up for a celebrity event to golf. And it was my baby broadcasting year, Will. I was green as could be and covering sports in the South for the first time.
Okay.
And I got Steve Spurrier mixed up with somebody else in terms of some things that he did with golfing in his past. And he was coming off the 18th hole, and I went up and I said, he was like really doing well at that point of the tournament. And I said, how does your prior experience help, with you on the course today? And he said, what do you mean prior experience? I said, well, you have prior experience golfing, right? Like you've done this in the past and you've been in some tournaments. I don't know what you're talking about, young lady. I have no prior experience. I about crapped my pants. I looked the other way and said, so where's Drew Brees? Because he was the nicest guy I spoke to at that celebrity tournament. But forever, I was scared by that whole situation with Steve Spurrier in that moment.
Steve. Yeah, he was absolutely as big of a villain as it got in this area of the country for a long time. That's fair. It's always good to know your villains really are like you would actually hate them if you met them.
For sure. He did not rub me the right way.
It makes it a little bit easier. 615-737-1045 is our number. We'll shift gears to Tennessee and Kentucky when we come back. What do you want to see for the Vols tonight? And do you still believe they are a national championship contender in March Madness this season? That's next as Hour 2 begins after this.
What's going on? 7:01. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I am Robert Walsh. 4 new head coaches introduced yesterday, starting with the Cowboys. Brian Schottenheimer, who becomes the 10th head coach in Cowboy history. Jerry Jones noted that it was a huge risk to hire a 39-year-old with no head coaching experience, but Brian is the son of legendary coach Marty Schottenheimer. In New York, Aaron Glenn was introduced as the new head coach. One of his first questions as the new head coach was Aaron Rodgers. Is he going to be back with the Jets? He said the team will look at every position, including quarterback. And a year off for 73-year-old Pete Carroll, as he is back in the NFL with the Raiders. Said the organization will lean heavily on Tom Brady when searching for the next franchise quarterback for the Raiders in free agency and the draft. And Jaguars introduced their new head coach, Liam Cohen, who was the offensive coordinator for the Bucs last year. Said the opportunity to coach the Jags was one that he could not turn down. The Saints, the only team looking for their head coach, talking with Kellen Moore and former Cowboys head coach. For their foundation repair and your waterproofing needs, you got to go to USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Seven a.m. as our number 2 begins this morning on Ramon, Kayla, and Will, live in studio, talking NFL draft, Vols hoops, and lots more. Streaming live on 104.5 The Zone TV, Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Coming up here in hour 2 in 15 minutes, Ramon Foster will join us from Mobile as a part of Titans Radio's coverage of the 2025 Reese's Senior Bowl. He has given us a couple of prospects he is watching today as practice begins down there at the University of South Alabama, and says he has talked to one SEC prospect already this morning.
Nice.
So looking forward to catching up with Ramon coming up in 15 minutes about just that. Your thoughts on the phones at 615-737-1045. Tonight, 6 o'clock, Thompson Bowling Arena, Tennessee versus Kentucky. A bit of a short-handed Kentucky team missing one of their starters that we'll talk more about coming up. But, Kayla, I think the big question that I have, and I think that many people have about this Tennessee team is, what is their ceiling? Do you still believe, after the losses that Tennessee has taken, that they are still a national championship contender this season in men's basketball?
I truly do, Will. And I did mention this yesterday on the show when we briefly touched on this after their recent loss at Auburn, which was, by the way, such a great game. I felt like by the way they performed on the road in what I think is the most hostile environment in college basketball, and I think Slay would agree with that as well, who's been there, they were right in the fight. And we've all talked about how tough this SEC schedule is. It's the top conference in basketball now. I can really say that with, no doubt in my mind now, Will, which in other years, maybe you could have said the Big Ten's up there, the Big 12. This is by far the best conference, especially when it goes to having teams go on the road. And right now, that's what all these teams in the SEC are trying to figure out. When they go on the road, how do you capture those victories, right? And it is a long season. So everything that I have seen from Tennessee so far makes me believe they are still right in the hunt for when the postseason comes around, they could start to play their best basketball. That's what I care about the most, Will. I don't care about them playing their basketball at the start of the year, and I understand they were undefeated for a long period of time.
Right.
I don't care about some of these things that are happening in between with some losses on the road. I care about how they finish the regular season and head into the postseason, and I think they have the parts to do it because certain parts are going to heat up. There's no doubt about that.
Right.
Igor Milicic as an example of that. I think they've got the head coach with the experience too, and we know what he's been able to do in the past with these tournaments. So I am confident they could still make a run.
I think what Tennessee did defensively against Auburn in their own gym tells you unequivocally that they are a national championship contender. And honestly, if you feel worse about that coming out of the weekend, then I don't think you're giving Auburn the credit that it deserves for the atmosphere that it has created. I think it is absolutely the best atmosphere today in college basketball. I think it's Auburn and Duke. Take your pick. But I would put Auburn up against anyone in that. I think the fact that you got so little scoring-wise out of your front court and your X factor in Igor Milicic had the night that he did, yet you still had a chance to win it on the final shot in Neville Arena is significant. And I do think, and I've said it all season, Igor Milicic is the guy that on any given night can make this Tennessee team very different. And he's shown you some ability, right? He had 13 points at the opener against Arkansas. His 16 points, though, in the loss at Vandy is his only double-digit performance since that game. Last week, he was 2 of 11 from the field. When Tennessee has been at its best, Igor Milicic has been close to his best. Against Virginia, Baylor, Syracuse, and Miami, he was in double digits in all of those games scoring-wise. They don't need him to score 20 points. Heck, they don't really need him to score 15 to 16 points. If you get 10 points, 7 rebounds out of Igor Milicic, you get 12 points, 6 boards out of Igor Milicic, that's a good night for him, and that's a good night for Tennessee basketball. What I did like about last week is the performance of Zakai Ziegler. I think he has even gone to another level over these last couple of games. And I think it's good for Tennessee that you are seeing the two-man game between him and Felix Okpara become a bigger part of their offense. I thought Felix was terrific against Mississippi State. He had a really tough assignment against Auburn, and I think played pretty well, given some of the foul trouble that he and others were in against Jedi Broom as well. But I think the more this offense gets away from just being based around Chaz Lanier and can be more Zakai Ziegler facilitating off those ball screens up top with Felix Okpara, with Cade Phillips, there is nobody who throws lobs better in college basketball than Zakai Ziegler. It feels like him and Felix have really gotten on the same page with that. That's what I'm looking for with this Tennessee team, is him taking a more of not just a facilitator role, but a scorer role within this offense, because I think it's working for this Tennessee team. I think that's one way they can keep getting better.
Yeah, and when you look at it, Will, I know Chaz Lanier, you hear the name and you're like, we need him to be what Dalton Kincaid was, right? We need him
Dalton
to
Connect.
be, or Dalton Connect, sorry.
We've had NFL on the brain.
I know, right? We need him to score. Like, you cannot compare one to the other, though. I think that's important to just put out there first and foremost. He's a different player. And I think, again, what you're describing, Will, is very true, especially on those nights where he's not going to be on every single night. And to be able to facilitate other players to have those nights, that's what you're going to need in the tournament. And you always need your best players, no doubt about it, when you come to the big dance. But there are going to be matchups or there are going to be nights that those guys are going to be off. And so I think you're exactly right. Zakai Ziegler is the key to it all. And the more you see him compete, as long as he is healthy, I think he, as long as you have him on your team, you're going to be able to make a deep run in this tournament no matter what.
Ron Slay has popped up in the F&M Bank chat this morning, commenting on YouTube, and says nothing has changed to him. Florida, Auburn, Bama, and Tennessee.
Yeah.
The 4 teams at the top that are the national title contenders at the top of this. And he has told us on this show as well about the differences between the way Dalton Connect would score and the way Chaz Lanier scores. I've talked to Rick Barnes about it. You talk to anybody covering that program. Dalton Connect was his own facilitator who would take it off the dribble and take anyone on, 1 through 5. I'm going to go get mine. He was the facilitator to get his own bucket.
Hello.
Chaz Lanier might get you similar numbers. He's going to do that in a very different way. He is not the type to just demand the ball and say, clear out. Here I go. Right? And I think sometimes Tennessee's other 4 players on the floor are looking at him to be that. He is not that. He is not the type of guy that is going to just clear everybody out, Hey, I don't need you to screen. Here I go, the way Dalton connected in the second
Sure.
half against Auburn last season at home. He's almost more of a Klay Thompson type of guy. The quick release that he has to come off a screen, to come off a cut, down by the baseline, just get the ball and bam, it's up. And it's likely in at times as well. So you're going to get similar numbers. You're going to get different ways to get there. That provides you different challenges. So again, Tennessee fans, I don't think you need to be sounding the alarms at this point about this team. I think all of their goals are absolutely still in front of them. And honestly, you can make the argument you were proven that in a loss over the weekend at Auburn.
And I that's the thing. I'd rather, again, this is just me personally, I'd rather have my team finding some things out about itself mid-season in the heart of SEC play before anything. I mean, I'd rather them do that than be hot right now, to tell the honest truth, Will, because I do think there is lessons, like you said, to be learned about how players play. You are inserting new play. It is still like part of the season. You're still trying to figure out how to work different from a guy like Lanier, right? So I think that once it gets towards the end of the SEC season, that is when you really feel like, okay, as long as we're not having major issues pop up, you can feel comfortable that Rick Barnes has got his guys all thinking and on the same page.
Kentucky will be shorthanded tonight in Knoxville. Senior guard Lamont Butler is out, and sophomore forward Andrew Carr was listed as questionable on the SEC injury report last night. Butler 6.6 turnovers in the loss at Vandy, but he is a guy that does a lot for them as a starter. And as a guard who averages double figures, and Carr, questionable. He did not play at Vandy due to a back injury, averages just shy of 11 points per game. Kurt Kriisa also has been out since early December. He is out as well. Tennessee, an 8.5-point favorite against Kentucky, who is looking to avoid a 3-game losing streak tonight in Knoxville. It's the only thing that gives me a little bit of pause about this game. I trust Tennessee. I think Tennessee will win. But that is going to be a very desperate Kentucky team. Might not matter, but that's going to be a really, really desperate Kentucky team who has lost consecutive games for the first time all season. Coming up next, we'll go down to Mobile and we'll check in with the R in RKW. Ramon Foster from the Senior Bowl tells you what he's watching on the practice field, who he has talked to so far this morning. Coming up next here on 104.5 The Zone.
It's Ramon Foster for Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, y'all. They have been around here in business since 1990. They're also family-owned and operated, man. Jimmy Hiller, the CEO, well, he's been named recently amongst one of the most admired CEOs in all of the land, all right? It's because how he treats his team and his clients. Hiller takes care of the customers on every single job, every time. They stand by their work, so much so that they have a slogan, and it goes like this, man. Happy you'll be, or the service is free. If a customer isn't pleased with the work performed, they will make it right, all right? They have professional, experienced, and trustworthy technicians that come into your home and leave it cleaner and better than they found it, all right? And on top of that, you get true transparency pricing. What that means is this, is Hiller will line item whatever part of the job up front so homeowners can easily understand what they're paying for and why. There will be no hidden fees, no added costs, no surprises when you get your bill, all right? To book them or learn more about what Hiller has to offer you, simply visit happyhiller.com.
RKW continues on 104.5 The Zone from the heart of the Music City. With Kayla Anderson, I'm Will Bowling. Robert Walsh, our producer, joined by the R in RKW from Mobile, Alabama. Titans Radio's Reese's Senior Bowl coverage continues, and our Ramon Foster joins us right now. Ramon, what's up? How we doing?
Man, we're good at the convention center right now. I think it's a little bit warmer down here in Mobile than it is in Nashville.
Rubbing it in.
I still have on a hoodie. But hey, we're good.
Makes us feel better.
Exciting.
Ramon, I have a challenge for you for these daily check-ins we're going to have with you. I'm going to need you for the rest of this week. I'm going to need the best way Coach Mack described a football player from every day of practice, if you can do that for me.
There we go.
Okay, well, I got one early edition for you if you're ready for it.
Oh,
okay?
I am always
Do
ready
it.
for Coach Mack wisdom. Hit me.
We had offensive lineman from West Virginia, Wyatt Milam, on just now with us with a sit-down interview. And at the end of it, Coach Mack does what Coach Mack does. He was like, hey, put those big paws up next to Moan to see how big they are. And I was just like, yes, that's Coach Mack we were looking for. My hands were just as big as his. He had a longer thumb than I did. And I was just like, you know what? I'll give you that, man. He was a great kid. So that's the mechanisms right there that we had
All right.
so far this morning.
Put those big paws next to Ramon's. I love it. Well, Ramon, I know you have already met with one SEC prospect. I think a lot of people here are interested in considering what the Titans could maybe do at the tight end position moving forward. Mason Taylor from LSU. What'd you take away from sitting down with him?
Man, you guys know I always say, like, the NFL is a fraternity, right? So we're going in last night to where the players, the prospects, hotel architects had to pick up some credentials and stuff like that. And I ended up running into a guy that I knew from Pittsburgh that also represents Mason Taylor, too. And he was just like, you remember him? I'm like, yes, I remember you. He was like, hey, we're down here. We got a few prospects, Mason Taylor. I was just like, wow. And the first interview we have this morning was also Mason Taylor. But the NFL is so interconnected, man. That's why we have those conversations about guys getting jobs and stuff like that. Like, it's such a fraternity of everybody knows everybody. But specifically on Mason Taylor, man, great kid. You can tell he understands this process. You can tell he's the guy that gets the game. We asked him some intricate, detailed things as far as, okay, how did your father prepare you for these types of moments? And the biggest thing that he had to say is we always facilitated competition. We always, hey, if there was a kid out there that was trying to beat me and my father, I understood that. And those were the things that he had to deal with growing up. So it's kind of good to hear him acknowledge that, hey, this isn't just a new, process for him. He's a guy that understands what he's getting himself into, understand what it meant to play big-time football in the SEC. If I'm not mistaken, Amy Wells asked him about, who was he looking forward to seeing? And he was just like, man, I'm actually just excited to see the guys without their face masks on, without their helmet on. Because he's seen a lot of these guys that are down here, the Ole Misses, the Texas A&Ms, and Arkansas. So he's familiar with the guys. It's a matter of him, showing that he can be real good in the line of scrimmage as far as what tight ends are asked to do in most NFL offenses. And that is blocking at the line of scrimmage. They can be liabilities at times. And I think that's one of his biggest challenges.
I think you're back on. Okay, sorry, we lost you for a moment, but you're back. Ramon Foster joining us down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. Already hard at work this morning. You are going to be keeping your eye on the edge position today. So I will start with this. Mike Green out of Marshall has emerged as one of the top edge rushers in this 2025 draft. Now, Moan, I know that there were some NFL analysts that were concerned a bit about his size, but he put that to bed when they officially weighed in yesterday. 251, looks to be in great shape. How do you feel like he could be a game changer in terms of rising his stock?
Now, he's one of those guys, Kayla, that I'm excited to see how a dude from Marshall is going to compete against, a tackle from the ACC or the SEC or the Big Ten, and that's going to be one of his biggest challenges because, if I'm not mistaken, he had 17 sacks. He's the Sun Belt Player of the Year. He checks every single box as far as the accolades go. It's a matter of, in these settings right here where it's good on good at the Senior Bowl, how will he actually go up against those guys in reps? Does that 250 that you mentioned right there, Kayla, actually stand up, or was it a bunch of water weight? Was it a bunch of, hey, let me make sure I can just eat and add weight instead of, adding muscle? That's going to be one of his biggest things. But what I will tell you this, too, in these processes, it's not about how much they can uplift you. It is, Kayla, how much do you weigh? How long are your arms? How big are your hands? And at the end of the day, all of that will go to bed if he continues to do what he did at Marshall, and that is wrecked offensive. And that's what he has to show this week, besides the weight for a guy like him. Most guys, I mean, they'll tell you, like, either it's hard for them to lose weight or it's hard for them to keep weight on. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, what I've found out in this league is if you can produce, they will find ways to put you on the field. Now, you don't want a guy like him at his size being 225 or straddling the 230s or anything like that. But it results down to getting to the quarterback and making TFLs, man. He did everything that you need a guy like him to do, and I am excited to see how he stacks up against this group. I mean, just for instance, too, Kayla, 17 sacks. But not only just that, because sacks can be one of those things that, all right, we can make up for a sack. But the 23 tackles for loss, and I think he had 3 forced fumbles this year. That tells me that guy has a knack for getting the ball out and just finding his way in the backfield. And that, to me, considering he transferred from Virginia to Marshall, again, in this era of athletes, a lot of people will chase the school. But what a lot of guys have to do is chase reps. And he's a dude that's leaving school early to pursue his dreams in the NFL. So, yes, my eyes are locked in on him for sure today.
Moan, so from one smaller school to a school that's right here in the SEC, it's hard to literally miss this guy. He stands like almost 6'7". Landon Jackson out of Arkansas. Here's one of the words that is heard to describe him: high motor as a pass rusher. What's special about this guy when it comes to the edge position?
It is that, Kayla. It's his motor and his size, too. It's hard to buy those types of things. Like, you can train a motor, but the size that comes along with it, if I'm not mistaken, he was one of those 4, maybe 5-star guys coming out of high school. I think he originally committed to LSU and then transferred to Arkansas, and he's one of those guys that went viral for hitting the speed bags in practice, doing pass rush drills and stuff like that. But here's what he did. He's been consistent as far as his play goes. I think the last couple of years he's had 5.5 sacks. Now, it will come down to a system to him. I'm not sure if he's like a Detroit Lions type of player, or will he end up being somewhat like one of those Buffalo Bills, like Gregory Rousseau type of put your hand in the ground, 3 technique / 5-7 technique type of guys. But what I know is this: he's consistent. He has the size that you're looking for, and he has that relentless motor. We're familiar with him this past year also. In the Tennessee-Arkansas game. He had a good game, if I'm not mistaken, against us. So, again, one of those guys we're familiar with in the SEC that you have to keep an eye on. And what we know in this process is it's hard to buy. Well, it's hard to find size. You can buy it now in the draft, but production is something that we're talking about the pre-draft too. Like, that's where the Titans are also, as far as like needing guys to get after the quarterback. Having questions about what's going to happen with Harold, or that's at least from our side of things, not the Titans side of things as far as that goes. But the media, trying to figure out where the production is, filling this roster as Chad Brinker said, with ex-player, big, mean, fast, smart guys. Landon fits that mold that they're looking for moving forward. And not just him, too. It's the other, Mike Green also. He fits that mold of just playmakers. Now, he's not super big, as you mentioned earlier, Kayla, but those are the things you're looking for as it pertains to what's missing on that squad in Nashville. It's these types of guys, especially if they stay healthy and do what you think they can do through this process.
And Mo, real quick, you are right. He actually transferred from LSU to Arkansas ahead of that 2022 season. So,
sure did.
Ramon, Nick Scorton at Texas A&M is another guy in the same group, and another bigger guy, maybe the other end of the spectrum from the Marshall prospect. And I think, Ramon, if I'm hearing you correctly, it feels like edge rusher is one of those positions that could have a run early on day 2 of the NFL draft. And I know a couple of analysts, I think it was Daniel Jeremiah, put out there this morning, the strength of this draft is the middle of the draft, and picks 20 through 60, he said this morning, are very similar caliber of players. Does Nick Scorton fit into that same mold? And is this a position the Titans could address in day 2 of the draft if they didn't get Abdul Carter with the number 1 overall pick?
Yeah, and that's what's fascinating about it. Remember, we spoke about this a little bit on Monday. It's like, okay, well, what if nobody wants to dance with the Titans as far as, like, moving back in the draft? Then there has to be a plan moving forward for what the rest of these picks hold for them. And we know this. Okay, quarterback is in play. Edge is in play. Heck, you need an offensive lineman probably somewhere down the line, linebacker like. But to me, I think down here at the Senior Bowl, the strength of this Senior Bowl week is, to that point, the defensive line, meaning D tackles, and the edge guys. And that's where a guy like Nick Swartzen comes into play for me, Will. I do think there's a lot of quality and value for those guys if, of course, health plays a part in it and the pre-draft goes the way you want to. But he's a guy, Will, that transferred from Purdue to the SEC. I think he ended up also making first-team SEC accolades this year, too.
Yep.
But not only just that, he leaves Purdue after registering 10 sacks. And here's the other part that gets me. The sacks, all right, a quarterback can run into you. But it's the TFLs. He had 15 last year as a sophomore. And in the SEC, his sack numbers were down. I think he only had 5.5. But his ability to get into the backfield was still huge. 14 tackles for losses. And you know they have a rotation at Texas A&M, so it's not like he was playing every single down. It was a matter of him being effective when you needed him to. He, to me, y'all know I've been all over Walter Nolan and just what Ole Miss guys are doing for you. After seeing his tape and his relentlessness, I don't know. This is going to pain me to say this, y'all. I don't know if there's a tackle here at the Senior Bowl who can stop him from what I've seen. Now, again, they got to be put in position to actually make plays, and the one-on-ones are just what they are. But the way this young man, Nick Scourton, I think it's Scourton also, plays, he could really rise up the ranks this year. I mean, this draft season, how he's played in the SEC. Again, only had 5.5 sacks this year, 14 TFLs, but he still made first-team SEC. Also transferring from Purdue to the SEC, and it transferred over. So I like those type of guys that'll leave a different conference and still have the same effectiveness in the new conference, and that's what he did this year too. As much as Texas A&M lost from that mega class that they had a few years ago, they replaced it with a guy like him, man, and I think you get great value, Will, to your point. That second, if they can get a third-round pick, third round, fourth round, spot of the draft, these are the type of guys that you want to go get because production is there, the ability to make plays is there, and there's a proven concept that they can play big-time ball. Borgonzi and also Brinker, everybody has said they want big, fast, smart guys. He fits the mold of what the Titans should be after in this draft season right now.
So, Ramon, when you look at the offensive linemen in Mobile, and not talking about one specific prospect, but just when you go take the binoculars that you've bought and are not going to borrow from Coach Mack this time around, what is the number one trait you want to see from a college lineman to say, yep, that guy can play in the NFL?
Well, we got one. Well, we just talked to one here, Wyatt Milam from West Virginia. He's a career left tackle at West Virginia. The last 2 years, Rhett informed me he's given up no sacks. We're talking about 2 years in a row, no sacks. Well, if we're asking this team to draft a prospect on the offensive line that can do something specifically, I think if you have a dude like him in 2 years that haven't given up a sack, you got to have a radar on him. I do think he can fall into that second-round pick. Now, here's the thing. He's a college tackle that's also moving to guard. He told us in our sit-down they got him starting at left guard today. You know what that also tells me? If he'll move to left guard, he'll move to right guard.
Yeah, right.
Okay? So the way I view him is, in my sit-down with him, he's a West Virginia guy. He's gritty as hell, and he somewhat acknowledged that in our sit-down and his ability to want to finish every single play. If you can get me a guy in this rookie year that I don't have to over-teach how to pass protect, then if he's lacking in the run game or if he, is not as nasty as you want it to, in my personal opinion as an offensive lineman, I think it's easier to teach a guy how to be meaner in the run game than to teach him how to pass set. So, yes, I'll be honest with you. I don't have a pre-draft crush, but I kind of got my eye on a guy, okay? And his name is Wyatt Milam. But I'm not in the draft room. The way I look at his situation is smaller school, plays big-time ball as far as West Virginia goes. But he contributed a lot of what they did at West Virginia because they had Zach Frazier last year that also went second round. He said they reshaped everything that they did as far as their weight room, their push to train, their ability to just understand that if you play them, you're going to feel it. And that, to me, I think is where the Titans need to have their mindset on a guy like him and really break down his mental concepts of what it means to play on the offensive line. And he also was a lot like me also, too. He said he played tight end up until his ninth grade year, and then he dropped the football in practice. And the next day, coach put him at left tackle, and the rest has been history. So I get it, man. Some of us are not meant to catch football.
Was he a kicker, Ramon? Did he also drop kick the way you did at Ripley High School?
I didn't ask him that, but he's still roaming around here, Will. I'll get that answer for you. But, Will, that's what, to fully answer your question, I think if you can find a guy that's smart enough, and I'll also say big and strong enough, because it's going to have to play a part with where the Titans are, too. It's going to be, I think, still some gritty days in front of that offense. But if you can get a guy, if you are going after a quarterback that on day one, pass protection is one of his strengths, I'll live that life a whole lot better, Will and Kayla, if that's the case.
Moan, just switching gears quickly to the quarterback position. While I know it's probably not the Titans, front of their mind right now with the quarterbacks that are down there, there are still some intriguing prospects, specifically in Jalen Milroe and Jackson Dart, who has got a lot of attention lately. What's maybe the rumblings down there that you've heard right now in terms of who's being a little more favored, who could climb up those draft boards as QB number 3?
It seems to me that the buzz is going to be Jackson Dart. Mm-hmm. The offense, his style, the attachment to the lane. I know our teammate Zach Lyons has said, his ability to throw open in that offense is somewhat skewed because the percentage that the wide receivers were wide open. But, I would also say in those situations, like being able to have touch and not overthrow and underthrow those guys in those situations plays a part too. So this process will be who do you want to fall in love with more than anything. And another guy that I've heard a little bit about has been, and not in a great way, but Dylan Gabriel, I think, checked in smaller than he was listed in the program at college. So we'll see if he turns into a Drew Brees type of guy to where they're going to use and move him around the pocket, because I do think that's his game in general. But the guy I think that has everybody's eyes this upcoming week that could really move up to the QB3, it may be Jackson Dart. I want to say, Jalen Milroe, but I think they were knocking him already, Kayla, just on the size of his hands, right?
Oof.
So
Kenny Pickett style?
I think his hand size, was smaller than they thought. And here's the thing, so I think a lot of people bring up, tiny hands and joke about those types of things. But there is a difference from the college football to the NFL football. It is a sizable difference on the football size. And that's why it's also important to have a guy that can grip the ball like that. And not just, the gripping of the football, but it's also the protection of it too, on the basis that, look, guys are around you. And we saw from this past weekend, Josh Allen had dudes around him and the ball still in just one hand, and he was able to tuck it away. That's why hand size is important, I'll say specifically for that position. Offensive linemen with small hands, which I don't have them before you got to start speculating. I got like over 10-inch hands. Okay. But those types of things right there do matter when ball security plays a part in what you're asking guys to do. So that's why the focus for the quarterbacks, does he have sizable hands or are they tiny?
They're not hands, they're paws, unless you're a quarterback. Ramon Foster from the Senior Bowl this morning, checking in with us. Quickly, Ramon, I need a score prediction for Tennessee and Kentucky, please, tonight.
Tennessee, Kentucky, score prediction?
Yeah.
It'll be up and down because Kentucky's an up and down team, too. Give me 76 and 76-68.
76-68. You heard it here first. Ramon Foster from Mobile, courtesy of our friends at Titans Radio, doing a great job, working hard down there. Ramon, we appreciate your big pause picking up the phone to talk with us this morning. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Mo.
No doubt. I'll be sending you guys notes throughout the day, man. So I'll keep you updated.
Lovely.
Thanks, Mo.
Thank you, sir.
Dylan Gabriel, 9-inch. Not nails. Hands.
There you go. There is Ramon checking in from Mobile. We will do that quite a bit as the week continues from down there at the Senior Bowl. Coming up next, there is an assistant coach who is officially heading back to his employer last season. I want to know why he didn't get a closer look at head coaching positions. That's coming up next.
Ooh, Nashville is popping, right? It is one of the best cities to live in. We've got options all over the place, but sometimes too many options, at least when it comes to finding a local real estate agent that you can truly trust. That's why you have to check out my friend Bernie Gallerani. Look, Bernie Gallerani, I've told you, he has years of experience, but he has a proven track record as well. And he's not going to let you down. In fact, Bernie guarantees to sell your home in 30 days, or he's just going to buy it from you. Selling a home can be overwhelming for John. It seemed to be that it was going to be until he was working with Bernie Gallerani Real Estate. They made the process fast and easy, and he couldn't believe how quickly his house sold. From the start, the team was on top of everything, offering expert advice on staging and always being available to answer questions. Even helped John finalize the paperwork on his new home. Thanks to their professionalism, dedication, and the entire experience was completely seamless. Bernie, the only real estate agent in Nashville, recommended by Barbara Corcoran of Shark Tank, only real estate agent I would trust to sell my home. So simply give him a call on his cell phone. In fact, 615-428-2644. That's 615-428-2644. Or just go check him out at BernieGallerani.com.
RKW hitting the NFL headlines, wrapping up the first half of the show. 615-737-1045. So to come this morning, VolQuest Sauce and Price at 8:20, and SEC Network's Richard Hendrix talks SEC hoops with us coming up at 9:20. In the league yesterday, The Athletic putting out there that the Ravens are finalizing a contract extension with offensive coordinator Todd Monken. After a season where the Ravens led the NFL in total yards and rushing yards per game, finished third in points per game, and had the highest offensive DVOA, a fancy analytic way to say they had the best offense in the league. First team in NFL history to pass for over 4,000 yards and rush for over 3,000 yards. Kayla, I think that Todd Monken is the Steve Spagnuolo of offense. I think he is a guy who deserves a closer look at head coaching opportunities, and I think the league is way too hung up on how old he is. 58 years young. Why do you think Todd Monken doesn't get more looks to be a head coach in this league?
That's funny that you said that at 58 years young, I should say, but it is interesting once we creep closer to that 60 mark when we're talking about NFL coaches now as head coaches. I think we're getting further and further away from that number, and it's more closer to 40-year-old head coaches in the league, and that's really been the trend. By the way, Steve Spagnuolo, you're right. I think that's an interesting kind of comparison there. He is 65 and obviously doing things at a high level at Kansas City, but it's not getting looks as much as a head coach. And I think it might be that, Will, that Todd Monken, because of his experience, although he's not yet 60 years old, he is considered a little bit more experienced and maybe set in his ways in terms of how he wants to run an offense. But at the same time, those offenses under Todd Monken have been quite successful. And we even go back to his days when he was at Georgia before he came to Baltimore, where he had Stetson Bennett as his quarterback and was able to produce or put together an offense at Georgia where I think they almost wish they had him back doing what he was doing at Georgia. Yeah. So it is a little mind-boggling to me when it comes down to it, because not only did I mention Stetson Bennett at the college level, but once Monken arrived in Baltimore, I feel like he elevated Lamar Jackson's play to a different level. I think we look at Lamar Jackson as a different player now than when he was with the previous coordinator.
If he was 10 years younger with a bald fade haircut, he'd be a head coach.
I kind of think that's a thing.
Honestly, if Todd Monken had all the same resume details, had a nice haircut and some Ray-Bans in his headshot, and was from the West Coast, he would be a head coach tomorrow. And Bert, I know you agree with me on this.
100%. And you kind of looked at what he did at Georgia but coming into the Ravens. Like, okay, he was really good at enabling Brock Bowers. But to your point, Kayla, he also got the most out of Lamar Jackson. Like being able to put him in a more sophisticated passing system than what he had when Greg Roman was there, that was more of a run-centric play. And he didn't go away from that. He was able to marry the two concepts about how having a power run system while also doing some crazy things in the passing game. When I was looking at the numbers the other day as far as Monken as the head coach, I got the same comparison you did, Will, with Spags and the Chiefs. I actually brought that up to Buck yesterday. He was like, why is Steve Spagnuolo not getting – I'm like, why is Todd Monken not getting interviews?
It's the same exact thing.
It's the ageist debate where we're hiring younger and younger and younger head coaches. And I wonder if that, in part, is to try to connect with the younger players, or is that to try to change the philosophy on offense to more forward thinking? Like, where do people get off? Because you would think that, like, the older coaches have seen more, gone through more, be able to adapt. I don't know. I think Todd Monken would be a great coach. So he had interviews with the Bears and I believe it was the Raiders this year, and then the Jaguars. Raiders also submitted an interview, and then last year he was involved in one or two head coaching jobs, but never made it past the second cycle.
Right.
And the outlier for this is Pete Carroll, right, who recently just got hired with the Raiders. The difference with Pete Carroll, I think, is he is the exception to the rule because he has done it at that level and won a Super Bowl. And I think they still see that Pete Carroll chewing gum on the sideline, the energy. Right. He's proven like he's not getting older in a way, but he is.
There's a proof of concept.
Exactly. And I think that's the only difference, guys, from people like Todd Monken and Steve Spagnuolo.
I'll make a comparison that might not be applicable. And if you think it's a bad comparison, tell me. But like talking about Tennessee and Kentucky in basketball. Like when Tennessee hired Rick Barnes, they did not see him being there for over a decade. It was the devil you know. It was the guy who's built programs his entire career and had a very high floor. I think Todd Monken and Steve Spagnuolo are high floor coaches.
Yep.
You just worry about them only being there for 5 to 10 years. But like Todd Monken, 58, like, I mean, Pete Carroll's what, 73?
73, yeah.
Like, if you gave me 15 years of a coach, like, okay, yeah, I'm signing up for that every single time.
Right,
so,
even if you get 8 years of Todd
Exactly.
Monken.
Sure.
Like, there's this idea that you're going to get this wonderkin, Kevin O'Connell type or Sean McVay type, and he's going to be there for 30 years. Like, we still have these discussions about Sean McVay retiring, and he's not old at all. So, I don't understand the way franchises do this, and I think they're so obsessed with marketability sometime of just having a coach in joggers, Ray-Bans, at a house in Beverly Hills, and just these trendy wonderkin coaches. I don't know. I think it's weird.
Yeah, I'm with you guys on that. And again, I mean, or it's either that or a name. I mean, that's the thing. A big time
Like
name who's
Schottenheimer.
done it high. Yeah, exactly. Oh my goodness, and that's a whole nother
The
story.
nepotism part of it. Yeah.
Or when you grab a coaches, sometimes you don't know if they're going to be like weird cats, like Liam Cohen.
Oh my!
That was
that
the.
bit
You know
for
how
later.
people say like, he won the press conference. No one's ever lost a press conference.
yeah.
He lost the press conference.
Who is weirder, the one with the eyes? Who? What was
Adam
that?
Gase in
Adam
New York.
Gase or this? They are very similar, guys.
Choose your fighter.
Holy
Adam Gase, Crazy
smokes.
Eyes, or Liam Cohen, Duval.
Was it Nick Sirianni's opening press conference pretty bad too?
I
Did we
believe
make
so.
Did we make fun of him for being like nervous
Yes.
and reading a written statement? I think Dan Campbell was poo-pooed on too. Dan Campbell was
Yeah,
the
biting
only
kneecaps.
the only one who lost the press conference initially and then won everyone back.
Exactly.
Duval.
Oh, and his face.
Oh,
His face was creepy.
yeah, really bad. Really, really bad. 615-737-1045. Look, Liam Cohen's been through a lot. He made Will Levis good. Coming up, what people are saying about two of the most interesting players at the Senior Bowl. There is a comparison for one SEC quarterback to a guy that's playing in the Super Bowl in Jalen Hurts. Does that work for you? We'll talk about that coming up next.
What's going on? 801. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I am Robert Walsh. 4 new head coaches were introduced to their teams yesterday. We'll start with the Cowboys. Brian Schottenheimer, who became the 10th head coach in Cowboy history. Jerry Jones noted that it was a huge risk to hire a 39-year-old head coach or a 39-year-old head coach with no head coaching experience. But Brian is the son of legendary coach Marty Schottenheimer. In New York, Aaron Glenn introduced as the new head coach. When asked about Aaron Rodgers, he said the team will look over every position on the team, including quarterback. So Aaron Rodgers, not a yes, not a no to him returning to New York. And after a year off, 73-year-old Pete Carroll back in the NFL with the Raiders. He said the organization will leave heavily on Tom Brady when searching for the next franchise quarterback, whether that's a free agent or through the draft. And the Jaguars introduced their new head coach, Liam Cohen, who was the OC for the Bucs last year. And he said the opportunity to coach the Jaguars was one that he could not turn down.
Duval.
The Saints looking for their next head coach, interviewing Kellen Moore and Mike McCarthy as the coaches that they're putting their sights on. For all your foundation repair and your waterproofing needs, you got to go to USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Second half of the show starts right now as Hour 3 begins on 104.5 The Zone. This is RKW, Ramon, Kayla, and Will. Ramon is down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. In studio, you've got myself, Will Bowling, Kayla Anderson, and Robert Walsh. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll be joined by VolQuest's Austin Price. Yesterday in Mobile, as the Senior Bowl gets started, Senior Bowl director Jim Nagy compared Jalen Milroe to Jalen Hurts, saying they have a lot more in common than just their first name. Says, quote, sitting up here 4 or 5 years ago, Jalen Hurts was a 4th or 5th round pick for most teams that year going back to our calls in November. He says Jalen Milroe is certainly higher than that on most teams' boards right now. So at least he's starting the process at a better place. So Jalen's got a really cool opportunity right now to help himself like Jalen Hurts did. Kayla, is that a fair comparison, Jalen Milroe to Jalen Hurts?
I get where our friend Jim Nagy is going with this. I truly do. I mean, first of all, let's start to correlate just because of the names and that they both played at Alabama at some point of their career. The only difference, I would say, with Jalen Hurts and Jalen Milroe and the opportunity at hand now, starting with the Senior Bowl, is I think that Jalen Hurts had a different experience in his growth. So what I mean by that is after he was the starter at Alabama in 2016 and 2017, he clearly lost his job. And 2018, he lost his job to Tua Tagovailoa, and he went to Oklahoma. And so for him, that was a very probably hard decision to be made, but one that I think he thought, what could help my game continue to develop so that I can be a better NFL prospect one day? And I truly believe his best work was at Oklahoma in that 2019 season. And that's where he maybe learned the most about himself as a quarterback. And then that helped catapult him in his career.
Right.
As Milroe, as you look at it, Will, we've all kind of come to the decision, at least I have, that he needs to probably go back for at least one more year at another place and continue to grow his game and work with maybe a different offensive coordinator, a different head coach.
Yeah.
And that could possibly then launch him to the next level. Because I think he has the tools and the leadership ability, but I think he needs a change of scenery to help his game elevate a little bit more before he's NFL ready.
To me, I think it's challenging because I think Jalen Hurts is a better athlete than what Jalen Milroe was. And at the very least, he had more opportunity to showcase that. When you kind of box score scout both of them a little bit, which again is not the end all be all, Jalen Hurts as a senior at Oklahoma ran for 1,298 yards, 5.6 yards per carry. Jalen Milroe's best season as a rusher was this past season. He had a full less yard per attempt at 4.3 yards per rush. He ran for 726 yards. In his career, he ran for only 300 yards more than what Jalen Hurts ran for in his senior season. So I think that's where you look at the first difference between them. And granted, Jalen Hurts played a lot more football than Jalen Milroe did. He was a 4-year starter.
Correct.
3 years at Alabama, 2016 through 2018. In 2019 against Oklahoma, or at Oklahoma. Jalen Milroe really had 2 seasons as a starter. Mm-hmm. Like you said, I understand the comparison that Jim Nagy is making. He's not comparing their college resumes the way I just did. He is comparing the two as NFL prospects. I think that's totally fair. What I would say, too, is that not all draft classes are created equally. One year you might be a second, third-round pick. Others you could be a first. I think Jalen Milroe could still play himself into being a first-round pick this year. It's just the accuracy and decision-making concerns for me that are significant. And if you are asking me how the two are similar, I think there's one key way that Jalen Milroe could be like Jalen Hurts. It's that in 3 to 5 years in the right place, I could see them being a successful quarterback. That, to me, is where I'm at with Jalen Milroe. If Jalen Milroe has to go into a situation and play right away, I don't think it's going to go very well. Jalen Milroe is going to have to go be a Jordan Love. He's going to have to go somewhere and sit. Honestly, he's going to have to go be a Hendon Hooker before he goes somewhere and is closer to a Jalen Hurts. And I think he's going to go somewhere that's going to have to also get a backup for their starter, because I would not trust Jalen Milroe if I'm a contending NFL team needing a good backup quarterback. I just think he has got so long to go before I would give him the keys to my offense.
The inconsistency was apparent this year.
Significant
inconsistency. In the games that they lost, he was completely shut down in terms of the ground game, right? And so you have to find a better happy medium with your game to truly be ready at the next level. And you're right, Will. Clearly, he's going to be drafted by somebody, but there is no way I see him starting. There's just too much to be learned still from this guy. Now, granted, I think people will fall in love with him. I love his character. I love the fight that he has. If you've ever heard him speak in a post game or whatever, he has all those things. But it's just it's going to be a developmental process for him if it comes to him actually, starting.
So between him and Jackson Dart, who are you higher on?
Right now, Jackson Dart, I would have to say. And I know it's hard because there's a lot of hype around him right now. But I do feel like this is a guy who clearly has been in one place for a while. And yes, he did get his start at USC in 2021 before coming over to Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin. But I feel like Jackson Dart, if you look at him right now, he's probably not going to be able to be a starter in the league. But I do feel like he could sit for a year or so and be ready to go right in. Look, he has tons of arm talent. He has a rushing upside. He's sneakily an athlete, right? We kind of
There's the white guy quarterback phrase.
Yeah,
mobile QBs.
Mobile QB.
But you're totally right.
We don't see him get enough credit for that, and he is a little bit younger than Sanders, Shedeur Sanders, and Ward. So you have the age on your side too with him.
I think it's interesting for me. A lot of the knocks we had on Hendon Hooker as an NFL draft prospect have to apply to Jackson Dart because of the system he played in. That Lane Kiffin system is not identical to what Josh Heupel is running, but it is very similar, and it comes from the same place in terms of the Art Briles run and shoot, tempo, wide splits kind of quarterbacking. The process that you have as a quarterback in that system is so different than what a lot of NFL offenses are. If you are willing to pair Jackson Dart with Cliff Kingsbury and run a college offense, well, then maybe we're having a different discussion. But I think Jackson Dart needs 2 or 3 years to sit before I would feel comfortable throwing him out there. I don't really like either of them, to be totally honest with you.
Not for here, especially.
There is just not a lot to believe in right away unless you are really willing to let these guys marinate and sit behind someone who knows what they're doing. I think Jalen Milroe has major decision-making and accuracy concerns.
Yep.
To me, the Jalen Milroe red flag is, why didn't you get better under Kalen DeBoer the way Michael Penix did? Because we had really high expectations, and rightfully so, with the offensive line Jalen Milroe played behind. That, again, wasn't perfect, but again, there's talent there. Throwing to Ryan Williams, throwing to those weapons, and not making the kind of jump that Michael Penix did in the exact same system. It just didn't happen. I would take Dart over Milroe if I'm picking between the two, because Dart has just played so much more football. I mean, he threw for almost 12,000 yards as a college quarterback. You mentioned the year he had at USC, but he threw for 4,000 yards as a senior at Ole Miss. The production is just so significant that I would trust him over Milroe just because of that.
Yeah, and when you look at his stats from last year, interesting in terms of a little bit difference in the completion percentage. He had 5 games under 60%, 7 over 70%. So a little bit of a varying difference there, Will. But 29 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions. That's the one good thing you really like to see from him, too, is just taking care of the football for the most part. But you're right. I think he's reactive to pressure. I think maybe a little bit inconsistent movement in the pocket, too. Just things that are still very raw with Jackson Dart as a talent.
Coming up next, VolQuest's Austin Price will join us as Tennessee gets ready to host Kentucky tonight inside Thompson Bowling Arena. They are also set to host a 5-star plus prospect in the basketball world. We'll get the latest on that front with Austin. Hit the Vols football headlines as well coming up next. A top 25 showdown tonight in Thompson Bowling Arena. A coach who just had a baby who's coaching again. And Tennessee football hot on the recruiting trail as well. Tons to discuss in Knoxville, Tennessee, as RKW continues this morning with Ramon in Mobile. You got Kayla Anderson and myself, Will Bowling, in studio, joined when the glass breaks weekly by VolQuest's Austin Price here this morning. Austin, what's up, sir? How are you?
How we doing, everybody?
Good.
We are good. There's never a dull moment, is there? Especially not for Kim Caldwell, who gave birth and coached last night. Austin, we've got a lot to talk about with you this morning.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, she's I honestly didn't. I think her plan was to not have to miss any game.
Right.
But, best laid plan. She had to miss one and, back out there on the sidelines last night after 1 week of giving birth. And, kudos to her. She's a tough lady, and it looked like she didn't miss a beat. Now, team, they struggled a little bit in the second, third quarter. They really missed a ton of shots for a 3 of 26 from 3 or whatever it was. It was not good, but they kind of scrapped and clawed and made it respectable in the end, only losing by 7 to a South Carolina team that's won now, I think, 55 in a row in league play and has only one loss in the season. That's the number 1 UCLA. So the number 2 team in the country did what they're supposed to do. And Tennessee, will continue to try to evolve and improve under first-year Coach Caldwell.
No doubt about it. For all of us that think we are busy, Kim Caldwell was busier over the last week. There's no doubt about that. Austin, before we get to Tennessee, Kentucky, I wanted to hit a couple of the headlines on the football side of things. Tim Banks officially signs his new 3-year contract. Just how significant of a development is that for Tennessee, and what is the biggest difference, I guess, in the old deal and the new deal and just the investment the Vols are making in him as really kind of the head coach of the defense?
Well, you reset the deal, right? I mean, he was on an expiring contract, and now he has got another 3-year deal. Obviously, a nice bump in pay, over $2 million a year. And, I think continuity, stability, I think all that stuff matters. When was Philip Fulmer and some of his program at its best when they had a stable group of coordinators? And, I think, to get Coach Banks back is a big deal. They've got to continue to improve, continue to evolve. He's got to continue to improve. Obviously, at the end of the day, he wants to become a head coach down the line. And I think, for him, figuring out a way to not have those moments like Georgia and Ohio State where you can't get home, where basically the quarterback just has all day to throw. Like that's some things they have to clean up as a defense. But on the whole, I mean, what Tim Banks has done since he got here, when he was left with nothing in the cupboard defensively, or very little, to now, is really, really impressive.
Austin, as you look at this offensive line moving forward, and Andre Carrick specifically, kind of the musical chairs Tennessee could have, whether or not he is or isn't on the team next season, is there any kind of timetable for the Vols learning if Carrick is a part of the roster next season?
Well, I think you approach it like he's not going to be there, and if he's there, then obviously that changes some things, and it does give you flexibility if Andre's back. If he's able to win the appeal and be back on this football team, that would adjust some things for Tennessee. So right now he's just kind of going through the process, still in school, and we'll see what the NCAA decides as far as the appeals. If it gets to a court battle, I mean, the NCAA is basically the Washington Generals the last 2 or 3 years. So, I'm not sure if it'll ever get that far. We'll see. But, right now, I think, if you're Tennessee, you approach it like Andre's not going to be back, even with him around, because I think that's where you have to. You have to assume the worst and then, hope for the best.
Austin Price, our good friend of VolQuest, joining us this morning on RK-Dub. So winter workouts are underway for football right now, Austin. They have officially announced 23 early enrollees. What's the benefit of that situation?
Well, it's a big benefit. It's not an end-all, be-all. I mean, you go back a couple of years ago, 2 of the freshmen that played the most were players that didn't arrive till the summer. So, again, it's not an end-all, be-all, but it does get you a jump start. It gets you around for spring practice, gets you in the weight room for winter workouts, as you just talked about. and lets the nutrition staff, the weight staff, the medical staff, kind of get their hands on you and see if they can, either get you healthy or transform your body or whatever. And then once you get on the field for spring practice, again, that's 15 practices that somebody that doesn't get here till the summer does not get. And so, it's big for a Travis Smith. It's big for a David Sanders, who Tennessee's got a big investment in. And, to me, they need him to see the field as quickly as possible. So it's big for all those young players. And, honestly, it's big for the transfers because they're in a new situation with new surroundings and a new offense or defense. And, they've got to kind of pick things up quickly as well.
Austin, let's switch to the court right now, and Tennessee with a big matchup with Kentucky tonight at home. But Kentucky also dealing with some losses as of recently. How do you see this one matching up?
Well, I think you look at Kentucky at its best. They're backed against the wall. They need a good performance. I think Tennessee's going to have to play well. I really do. I think this is going to be a Kentucky team that can easily beat Tennessee. If Tennessee does not play well defensively and shoot the ball better offensively. Tennessee played, I thought, was a fantastic defensive game the other night at Auburn. Just can't make shots. And so, they can't have that happen tonight. Kentucky scores it really, really well. And so even if you bring it defensively, they're still going to make enough shots to where you're going to have to make some shots at home. Tennessee has to serve at home. You have to win your home games. It's a big week. You're in a big stretch here going Auburn, Kentucky, Florida. With Florida being a team you've already lost to and got hammered by down in Gainesville. So, this is a big week for Tennessee. They need to hold serve at home, beat Kentucky and Florida. They actually have a 3-game homestand with Missouri on the back end of that. So, they need to win their next 3. And then they've got to win just enough on the road down the stretch here to give themselves a decent seed at the SEC tournament.
VolQuest's Austin Price, our guest. Austin, who is that player for you who needs to step up in the biggest way? Because we know what we're getting from Zakai Ziegler. I know Chaz Lanier has been a little up and down, more so in SEC play, but you largely know what you're getting out of him as well. Who is that X factor for you? Who's the next most important player in this Tennessee team?
It would be Igor Milicic. I mean, he provides, really nice prowess as a rebounder and has most of the year. But they need him to be able to knock down shots. And I don't know if that's threes. I just think it's score points, either at the rim, 12, 13, 14, 15 feet, or, back behind the three-point line occasionally knocking down a 3. But I think he's got to be that X factor for this team. And then off the bench, I would go Darlin Stone-Dubar. I mean, again, he's kind of a kid that, can kind of get hot when things are rolling, and they need him to give you 7 to 9 points every time out.
Austin, it's interesting as Tennessee continues moving forward in basketball recruiting. I know they're set to host 5-Star Plus, according to On3 Nate Ament, on an unofficial visit tonight for the Kentucky game. They're talking with 5-star combo guard Braden Burries and have a number of targets out there because there are a lot of holes on this roster, as there always is, especially in basketball. How strong of a contender, Austin, is Tennessee for Ament as they go up against a top 11 in his recruiting process that's filled with the blue bloods in college hoops?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he is a really, really talented player. I mean, the likes of Duke and all the other blue bloods are after him. And, again, Tennessee, I think, is very much in this. But, I think it's way too early to call them the team to beat or the favorite or anything like this. I think getting him to campus tonight is big to see the atmosphere because I think, Food City Center will be fantastic. It will be rocking, and it'll be awesome in there. And so to get him in there is big. If Tennessee plays well and performs well, I think obviously that helps because the crowd will be even more juiced. And, again, when you're in these type battles on the recruiting trail, whether it be football, basketball, baseball, against other upper echelon elite teams, this is a big boy battle. And so, Rick Barnes and them will have to show well. Obviously, Tennessee, from an NIL standpoint, will have to have a nice package for him. But ultimately it's about, proving yourself to him and, to the people around him that will help determine whether you land him or not.
Austin Price, a friend of VolQuest, joining us this morning on RKW, talking a little Tennessee hoops right now. Austin, how big is this home stretch for the Tennessee Volunteers to kind of get back into a consistent winning groove? And what do you want to see the most out of them with the home court advantage here?
Oh, I think it's huge. I mean, again, you have to hold serve, Kayla. I talked about that a minute ago. I mean, you've got to win the home games and then sprinkle in some road wins. You got to win at LSU. See if you can win at Oxford down the stretch. Win at Oklahoma. Those are all road games you have coming up on your schedule that are gettable. And then see what happens when you go to Rupp, in a return game up there. But you have to win the home games. If you win the home games and, you just sprinkle in some road wins, Tennessee is going to be just fine when it comes to SEC tournament seeding, because this league is going to beat up on itself. And everybody is acknowledging how deep and how talented it is. So losses don't hurt you like they would in another year. So, win the games at home. This 3-game home stretch is big for Tennessee, and go from there.
Do you think you benefit at all in a schedule like this, in a conference like this, maybe playing a little bit more inconsistent ball mid-season? I know that's a weird question to ask, but rather now than later.
Well, the coach's answer would be you want to win every game you play, right?
Yeah.
But I agree with what your point is, and your point is you don't want to peak too soon. You don't want to be playing too well in January and then kind of, falter come 1st of March. You'd rather be peaking into February, 1st of March, and I agree with you. Tennessee's a program. They won the SEC regular season. They won the SEC tournament the last, handful of years under Rick Barnes. This program needs a Final Four. And I said this on VolQuest, and some people are like, that's ridiculous. And I'm like, I just don't care about like the regular season and the SEC tournament. All that matters to a degree, but like if they go win all that and they get beaten in the Sweet 16, what's everybody gonna say? Couldn't do it again. Couldn't do it again. I think this team needs to be peaking at the right time. Obviously, given the way they play defense, given the way they, just play in general, they'll be in every game they play. It's the ability to get a good path. Look at last year. They may get to the Final Four last year if, guess what, they don't end up in the Midwest against Purdue. But that's how it shook out. And Purdue was really tough with Evie last year, and it was just hard to overcome that. And so, for Tennessee, it's about path. It's about peaking at the right time. And if they get those two combinations, I do believe Tennessee can do something they've never done as a basketball program. But again, it's about playing your best basketball when it matters, which is what your point of the question was.
Austin, on the football recruiting front, Joel Wyatt from the Webb School in Bell Buckle on campus and visiting with Tennessee and some buzz around that recruitment. Tyreek King already in the boat for the class of 2026, and Tristan Keys, the huge target that Tennessee's going after. I know we'll talk about Wyatt in a minute, Austin, but just how big of a priority is wide receiver specifically, considering the turnover that Tennessee has already had at that position for the class of 2026 in the high school ranks? How many resources are being committed to that position moving forward?
Well, I think you're looking at taking 3. Tyron Evans is already committed. You did not mention him. And then, of course, Tyreek King. And so Tennessee's in a good spot with Tristan Keys. But, I mean, that's great. It's a nice headline
right
in January. We'll see where it happens. Does he get in the boat? Even if he does get in the boat, kid from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, it'll be a dogfight to hold on to him. Joel Wyatt could play receiver. Could play Leo, play safety. I mean, the kid's just an athlete, so he could play a number of different positions. Don't think he's locked into being a receiver at the next level, but a kid that's just a playmaker all over the field. And so, again, Tennessee, I think will target, multiple receivers down the stretch here, but already having 2 in the boat, Tyreek King, who's right down the road and is freaky, athletic, and then Tyron Evans, who is just, he's a big kid. You stand beside him, you're like, this kid ain't hit a college weight room yet. He's big. So I think those are 2 nice additions early in this class, and I'm sure they'd love to add at least one more.
And Austin, on the way out, with the Senior Bowl starting today and practices down there in Mobile, Alabama, we've talked a lot on this show about Omar Norman Lott, and I know Ramon is high on him as a draft prospect. considering he has got such a high ceiling for a guy that hasn't really played as many snaps as a lot of his counterparts are who have played as many years as he has in college football. Do you agree with that assessment, and just how good can he be at the next level when you have a lot of these more undersized interior linemen, kind of pass rush types in a mold that he can really fit into at the NFL?
Yeah, I do think at the next level, his best football is ahead of him because he's got such a twitch, can play inside, could play outside in a 3-4. Omar, again, grew up, saw a lot out there in Sacramento. Is kind of, a kid that I think is tough mentally, and having played for Rodney Garner, I think that's helped him the last couple of years. And I do think that he could rise going to the combine, interviewing well, smart kid, knows how to articulate it, and then I think we'll perform well at the combine with all the drills they do for defensive linemen. So it won't shock me at all to see him go rocketing up the draft boards over the next few months.
We hit it all every Tuesday with Austin Price of VolQuest and On 3 at Austin Priceless on Twitter. A VolQuest subscription, a must-have for a Tennessee fan, 24/7, 365. Austin, we appreciate you, sir. Thank you.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thanks,
Yes,
Austin.
sir. Austin Price with us this morning, previewing Tennessee, Kentucky, and hitting some of the recruiting headlines there as well. Interesting on that basketball front with Nate Ament. The guy only has a top 11 in terms of the schools he's looking for. And essentially, if you just listed the top 11 basketball programs right now, it's all of them.
It's incredible.
But it is interesting. You think about where Tennessee is as a basketball program under Rick Barnes and the way they recruit. He gets in the process late and kind of closes the deal, which is essentially where they are now with him and Braden Burry's the 5-star point guard. And they're going to have some one-and-dones and some, one-and-done transfers in the program next season because there's a lot of holes to fill for sure.
No, absolutely. But just to be in the mix for that, Will, like you mentioned, top 11, and for Tennessee to be mentioned now as one of those schools who's always kind of now to go to the tournament, make a deep run, that alone is on Rick Barnes as how he's elevated and continue to elevate the program.
Totally. It is funny, though. We talked about it the other day. In the SEC, I think so many fans still view these games like we view college football games.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily, I would rather win, obviously.
Sure.
But if Tennessee loses a game because Zakai Ziegler gets in a fluke foul trouble and is out of the game for 6-7 minutes, I'm okay going through that experience for this team to be its best in March versus dropping a game in January. Tonight, though, does feel a little bit different because, A, it's at home, like you mentioned, and B, you can't let one loss turn into two because you played really, really well on Saturday. But you can't let Auburn beat you twice and get down on what didn't work on Saturday night down there and let that affect you moving forward into a pivotal 3-game home stretch.
That's the tricky thing about navigating the SEC now, and coaches have to take that into account, is you are going to have those days that you go on the road, you take a loss, but you have to find a way to bounce back. I think that's the thing you have to do in the SEC. You can take losses, but you have to bounce back quicker than you don't. And what Kentucky is doing right now is that's a little bit of gray territory for them because they have taken 2 losses, and you don't want to get on a streak either, but as Tennessee looks at it, we're at home. We have to protect. Mm-hmm. So it is who's going to be the best coach team tonight, Will, kind of situation. And I do still think that Rick Barnes and the Vols have the upper hand.
Coming up next, some NFL headlines, some speculation on quarterback dominoes, courtesy of ESPN.com. There are 3 teams that they say are suitors for Sam Darnold. We'll tell you who those teams are specifically, plus how one other quarterback domino in Pittsburgh, from an answer up there yesterday, could affect the Titans as well. We'll hit those NFL headlines for you coming up next.
of Middle Tennessee. The upcoming transit referendum is a game changer for our economy, business leaders, and the entire community. A robust transit system is essential for a thriving economy. With 54 miles of high-capacity transit corridors and 86 miles of new sidewalks, this plan enhances Nashville's connectivity, making it easier for everyone to get where they need to go. This isn't just about transportation. It's about economic empowerment. For business leaders, reliable transit means a more productive workforce. Shorter commutes boost productivity and job satisfaction, helping businesses attract and retain top talent. Improved transit also drives sales and supports local economies by making it easier for customers to reach businesses. The benefits extend to the entire community, connecting people to essential services, education, and recreation. This creates a more inclusive city where everyone can access the resources they need to thrive. Supporting the Choose How You Move transit referendum is an investment in our future. This is about creating a city where businesses can flourish, residents can thrive, and the community enjoys a higher quality of life. Join me in backing this transformative opportunity. Let's build a Nashville where everyone has the opportunity to succeed and to prosper. Visit the link in the caption to learn more about the referendum, how it will support our community, and how you can get involved. Thank you.
RKW continues, wrapping up hour 3 this morning on 104.5 The Zone as the free agent quarterback dominoes begin to fall sooner than you think. And it will be here before you know it, the free agency part of it. And Sam Darnold is the big domino. For a second straight season, the Minnesota Vikings quarterback is really the big domino to fall. So ESPN.com this morning, and writer Ben Solak, who, by the way, don't look at his mentions on Twitter. Warzone.
Holy smokes,
After a tweet he
right?
had about Josh Allen over the weekend. I tend to like Ben very much. I feel bad for him. Some of the grief he's gotten. Anyway, separate conversation. He writes about potential suitors for Sam Darnold and begins with the Raiders with $73 million in cap space. The Steelers, who yesterday the president talked about, we want to keep either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. And then the Giants. And he writes, while New York fans will permit nothing but Shedeur Sanders jersey swaps for the next 2 months, the Giants have the number 3 pick, not first. If the Titans or Browns decide to go with the quarterback they want, perhaps they are in the free agent quarterback market. To me, it feels like it's got to be Vegas. It's got to be the fit for Sam Darnold, right? Tom Brady, new influence, new GM. Brady's going to want his quarterback. I think that's the fit for him more so than any of these other teams, including the Titans.
I'm with you, Will. First of all, the New York thing, I think, not only scares me, I think it scares him. I know it's not the same team, right? But it's a New York team where the media just overcomes everything. He has finally found himself, for the most part, Sam Darnold has, in a market that, let's be honest, there's not a lot of eyes on the Minnesota Vikings, and I think it was a great fit for him, and he was able to get some confidence back. And I know the postseason or the end of the season didn't go well for him, but going back to New York, I think would be almost somewhat of a I'm seeing ghost situation again.
Yeah.
I think Vegas is a better place. I think you have a stable head coach in Pete Carroll who's worked with quarterbacks before that are a little bit older in some ways. He's seen development of them too, but I think it would be, this sounds funny, but a safe place for Sam Darnold to not have as many eyes on him, but still, have the recognition part of it as well, because it is the Raiders and Tom Brady is now a part of that.
So there are a number of scenarios here that Ben Solak puts out there. I am curious, out of all these options, what your favorite and least favorite is. So scenario 1,
oh gosh,
Sam Darnold goes to the Raiders.
Okay.
Kirk Cousins goes to the Steelers.
Okay.
Russell Wilson to the Jets. So new GM Darren Mogi was in Denver when they brought in Russell Wilson to Denver.
Sure.
And Aaron Rodgers goes to the Titans.
Oh, why did you end it like that?
So that's scenario 1. Scenario 2 is, that's right. Scenario 2 is Darnold to the Steelers, Rodgers and Wilson to the Raiders. Oh, that's a buddy cop show I would watch. Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers together in Vegas.
Oh, my.
Justin Fields to the Giants, and the Titans draft a quarterback who Ben Solak says Cam Ward is his number 1 option there. Scenario 3, the Jets trade up to number 1. The Steelers bring back both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, and the Titans bring in Andy Dalton as quarterback. So I'm giving you Cam Ward, Andy Dalton, or Aaron Rodgers for the Titans. I mean, I feel like out of those 3, I'm taking Cam Ward.
I'm taking Cam Ward. You guys know my thoughts on this, but just with the 2 other options, I'm thinking, okay, Aaron Rodgers, I think his book has come to a close, if you're asking me. Also, I don't want the drama. Andy Dalton, I think that he was a stable quarterback in his career, but let's be honest, is that really going to win you more games this year? I don't know. I don't think with this offensive line yet. We don't know what the parts added to this team will be. I'm not too confident that he's much different from a Mason Rudolph in that situation. So give me Cam Ward just for the thoughts of it's a new beginning.
Yeah,
that's tough though.
I don't like any of these options, to be totally honest.
I'd like Cam also to sit for a minute. Does
he know what like Daniel Jones is doing? Does he know what any of the other?
That's a good
Daniel
question.
Jones in here at all.
God, it's funny that he would give the red rifle a tag and not like DJ. So
God, you know what I almost said. I'm so glad I caught myself.
Yeah, I'm glad you caught yourself too. It would
red rifle better option of all the red.
Yes,
the red than a noun options.
I have a dog. Okay,
there we go. There we go. Somebody get that lipstick out of here. What I would not be opposed to is either bring. I heard them talking about it on 3HL. Bring Danny Dimes in here. Bring anyone besides any of the old geezers that were aforementioned. Do not bring Aaron Rodgers in here. Do not bring Aaron Rodgers in here, and just especially do not bring Aaron Rodgers in here.
Yeah, right.
I'm with you on all 3.
I
striking
think
out.
The worst thing the Titans could do at quarterback this offseason is sign Aaron Rodgers. The worst thing. Because then you make everyone else who's here also hate playing for the Titans. The way Rodgers would quickly. Like the cancer that he is in the locker room, I want no part of. Absolutely no part of.
No. And like I said, at least with a guy like Cam Ward, and again, I would like him to develop a little bit and have a British quarterback, but I know like that's not the day and age we live in. But at least though you're looking at like this is what we're doing moving forward. It's the future. We're resetting things. I feel like with any of those geezer quarterbacks, you're seriously going back and being like, well, but here's our quarterback and he's 40 years old and we're just going to do a year with this. Okay, I want to move forward at some point. I don't want to just sit in the dog crap still, right? Yeah. And see us sink. Like I want to see maybe mistakes made, but at least we know that there's progress moving forward. It's the future. Both of those quarterbacks just scream, we're going back.
So Ben Solak writes, when he gives the scenario of the Titans drafting Cam Ward, says, while new Titans GM Mike Berganzi made it clear his team is willing to trade the top selection or pass on a QB outright, it remains true that the Titans very much need a quarterback. Teams that have the first pick and need a QB end up drafting one 9 out of 10 times. He says, again, to me, that player is Ward, but this class isn't nearly good enough to lock any passer into the top pick in late January. I do think we are in a rare situation where the process is going to matter to differentiate Ward and Sanders. It is very rare that we go into the NFL draft process saying, these two guys are fairly equal. Let's see how this plays out. I do think we are in that scenario where the combine, where pro day, where these all-star game meetings, where the process is very much in flux, maybe that's more the public perception. Maybe in that building, they already know who they want. I tend to think, and I think some of the voices and rumors tell you that they prefer Shedeur Sanders because of the schematic fit into Brian Callahan's current scheme. But again, we don't know what's true and what's not.
That's what's
at this
so
point
hard.
In the process. And we don't know what they really care about and what they want to learn from this process.
And we don't even know if they already have a backup plan where they're like, we aren't taking a quarterback. We're going to sell it, but we're not taking one.
Right. Let's go to Jeremy in Nashville on the phone lines. Hey, Jeremy.
Hey, good morning, guys. What I was telling Bert off the line is how would the financial aspect of this play into, bringing in one of those guys like would Andy Dalton be cheaper in the long run to bridge that gap to try to do what you wanted Mason Rudolph to do? Or would it be cheaper just to draft that pick and, pay like whatever the top dollar pick for his position would be? And I'm not sure off the top of my head, but how much of the financial aspect does that play into it so that you could, start moving and getting some of these other pieces that this team is going to need down the road? But that's all I wanted to add to it. I'll talk to y'all later.
Thank you, Jeremy. You have so much money.
I was
it's
just
not
going to
significant.
say, I think you can do both. That's why I said beef up the quarterback room this year and have every opportunity to be able to use whatever you want because they have the money to do it.
You're most likely going to do both. You're going to sign someone and you're probably going to draft someone. At this point, unless someone really offers you a king's ransom for the number one pick, you're most likely going to take either Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders with the number one overall pick. It is just very, very rare for a team that needs a QB to not take a QB when they sit at the number one overall spot and have that option. It's just not an opportunity that comes around very much. Do I think it's the right decision? No, but I do think it's the decision they would make if they stay at number one. 615-737-1045. Speaking of quarterbacks, Ramon Foster weighed in earlier this morning about Jackson Dart versus Jalen Milroe. The buzz around the Senior Bowl about that position. We'll reset that for you if you were sleeping in this morning. Plus the other headlines and a look at Tennessee, Kentucky. Everything you've missed if you're just waking up. We got it for you on deck next on 104.5 The Zone.
What's going on? Just about 9:02. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I am Robert Walsh. 4 new head coaches introduced to their respective teams yesterday. Brian Schottenheimer, who became the 10th head coach in Cowboys history. Owner Jerry Jones noted that it was a huge risk hiring a 39-year-old with no head coaching experience, but Brian, been around the league for a while. He is also the son of legendary coach Marty Schottenheimer. In New York, Aaron Glenn introduced as their new head coach. When asked about Aaron Rodgers, he noted that the team was going to look at every position, just including quarterback. So it could be a free agent, could be a draft target, could be Aaron Rodgers to fill that quarterback need. After a year off, 73-year-old Pete Carroll back in the NFL with the Raiders. He said the organization will lean heavily on Tom Brady when searching for the next franchise quarterback, whether that be the draft or free agency. And the Jags introduced their new head coach, Liam Cohen, who was the OC for the Bucs last year, backed out of making himself the highest paid coordinator to be the Jaguars head coach. He said that was an opportunity that he could not turn down. The Saints still looking for their head coach while targeting Kellen Moore, the OC for the Eagles, and Mike McCarthy, who was released as the Cowboys head coach. For all your foundation repair and your waterproofing needs, you got to go to USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Tuesday morning, hour number 4 here already on RKW 615-737-1045. Kayla Anderson and Will Bowling with you. Ramon Foster down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. Robert Walsh makes the show happen, and we stream it live on 104.5 The Zone TV, Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch. Get you up on the headlines of the morning here in just a moment. Richard Hendrix of SEC Network going to stop by in 15 minutes, previewing Tennessee, Kentucky, talking SEC hoops, where 10 teams are ranked as of yesterday afternoon in the men's basketball AP poll. That is absolutely preposterous.
Isn't that wild to think from even just a few years ago?
Even just from last year.
Even from last year, yeah, that wouldn't be the case. And like Greg Sankey said, he wants to see an SEC team win the national championship. I think this year there's a lot of them that could do that.
Certainly. Tennessee, one of them. Kentucky, maybe one of them, but maybe on the outside of that. Heading into tonight's matchup in Thompson Bowling Arena. One of the headlines from Mobile at the Senior Bowl, Jackson Dart versus Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe compared to Jalen Hurts by Executive Director of the Senior Bowl, Jim Nagy, yesterday. Weighed in with small hands. We call that Kenny Pickettitis down in Mobile. Jackson Dart, the other guy that is potentially playing himself into QB3, maybe even better, depending on how good of a week he has in Mobile. We asked Ramon about that earlier this morning, taking his pick between those two guys.
It seems to me that the buzz is going to be Jackson Dart. Mm-hmm. The offense, his style, the attachment to the lane. I know our teammate Zach Lyons has said, his ability to throw open in that offense is somewhat skewed because the percentage that the wide receivers were wide open. But, I would also say in those situations, like being able to have touch and not overthrow and underthrow those guys in those situations plays a part too. So this process will be who do you want to fall in love with more than anything. And another guy that I've heard a little bit about has been, and not in a great way, but Dylan Gabriel, I think, checked in smaller than he was listed in the program at college. So we'll see if he turns into a Drew Brees type of guy to where they're going to use and move him around the pocket, because I do think that's his game in general. But the guy I think that has everybody's eyes this upcoming week that can really move up to the QB3, it may be Jackson Dart. I want to say, Jalen Milroe, but I think they were knocking them already, Kayla. And here's the thing. So I think a lot of people bring up, tiny hands and joke about those types of things. But there is a difference from the college football to the NFL football. It is a sizable difference on the football side. And that's why it's also important to have a guy that can grip the ball like that. And not just, the gripping of the football, but it's also the protection of it too, on the basis that, look, guys are around you. And we saw from this past weekend, Josh Allen had dudes around him and the ball still in just one hand, and he was able to tuck it away. That's why hand size is important, I'll say specifically for that position. Offensive lineman with small hands, which I don't have them before you got to start speculating. I got like over 10-inch hands. Okay. But those types of things right there do matter when ball security plays a part in what you're asking guys to do. So that's why the focus for the quarterbacks, does he have sizable hands or are they tiny?
So that's the first update of the week for us and Ramon down in Mobile. And Kayla, I totally agree with that analysis. I know you do too.
Yeah.
Give me Jackson Dart over Jalen Milroe as the third quarterback.
Yeah, I think you're right. I really do feel like when you look at both quarterbacks, no matter what, they're sit and develop products or prospects. But Jackson Dart, I think overall you got the most of what you were going to get out of at Ole Miss, right? And you see some upside. He's a little bit younger than Cam Ward, Shadur Sanders. He has a really solid arm. He has a knack for big plays. I think the deep ball, sometimes that hurts people here to hear that because of Will Levis, but there are a lot of things he does well. He's a sneaky athlete, but I think he's more of a raw prospect. But definitely the better out of the two, because I think personally Jalen Milroe could have really helped himself going and transferring and going somewhere one more year to really refine his game.
615-737-1045. Let's go to Mark in the borough up next. What's up, Mark?
Hey, y'all. It's probably loud in the background. I just got a quick question about COVID quarterbacks. I know Cam started in 2020 or 2021. After that, after Cam comes out, is that the end of the COVID quarterback era?
Thank you, Mark. Should be, honestly. And Cam Ward, not really the best example either of like the 25-year-old Hendon Hooker, like Bo Nix type. Like he didn't play 6 years. He's not Dylan Gabriel. But I would say, yeah, this is the last time you will see a mid-20s quarterback for that reason. That being said, the Diego Pavia rule exists. So guys that started in JUCO now have more time. So honestly, in today's NCAA environment where Austin Price rightly calls the NCAA the Washington Generals in court, we may not ever see the end of 24, 25-year-old quarterbacks coming out of college anymore. Yeah, if that rule sticks, and I do feel like we always see new things coming about. So you're right. The COVID definition, it might be gone because those have passed through. But with new rules and now that being on the forefront with, like you mentioned, the transfers, you just never know in this day and age what we're going to get in college football. And so I wouldn't say gone are the days of the mid-20s, but I think for the most part, it's probably going to be done. I agree. Totally. Titans locally making some staff changes yesterday. Luke Stockard, a tight ends coach, veteran coach John Fossil comes in to coach special teams now officially. And Tony Oden is the new passing game coordinator and cornerbacks coach, along with some other changes, some assistant position coaches brought in. I think as big of the headline is who is out. Colt Anderson officially gone. Chris Harris, the cornerbacks coach and passing game coordinator, his contract is up and will not be extended. Same goes for Justin Alton, the tight ends coach, and Anthony Levine, the special teams assistant. Are you surprised at all there weren't more changes on offense? Because the only change we have now is Luke Stockard and Justin Alton out on the side of the ball that struggled significantly more than on defense. I think the big question there is like, where were you going to see it, right? I think a lot of people would immediately go to Nick Holtz. But if you listened to that interview with Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports, that was one of the unsung heroes that Brian Callahan spoke about, was how much Nick Holtz truly does on a daily basis to really help
with the offensive game plan and just the management of things. So in no way after listening to that did I think that that was going to be a change just to see change. Also, you could have looked at the production of the wide receivers. Could you possibly have thought Tyke Tolbert having some kind of a change there would be the other place that I would look? But at the same time, it was just such a first year getting their feet under them in terms of this offense and under Brian Callahan. I'm not super surprised that there weren't as many changes made. And the only other one you would have looked at, guys, that's the apparent one, is the offensive line. And in no way was that going to be a change with Bill Callahan.
Like, hey, Dad, I don't want you to work for me anymore.
Right? Sorry, Dad, but we're going to have to part ways.
I know. No, I agree. I feel like if you believe in Brian Callahan, then you believe in his offensive assistants that are closest to him. And if Brian Callahan deserves another look, so does Nick Holtz, so does Bo Hardegree, in my opinion. I think if you give him a mulligan because of how bad Will Levis was, then those guys are granted that same opportunity as well. Interesting, I was just reading Pro Football Focus. PFF just put out their top big board. They put out their quarterback big board as well.
Oh.
This is as weird of a ranking as I have seen at the quarterback position. And I think the point of it is, guys, that a lot of this can still change because it's January. So they have got Cam Ward as their number one quarterback as the number 17 prospect on their big board. They have Shedeur Sanders ranked 43rd, and they have neither Jalen Milroe nor Jackson Dart as their third QB. They have Dylan Gabriel as their third quarterback.
Small hands, boy?
Ranked 67. Well, him and Milroe both have small hands from it. They have Milroe, the fourth QB, Will Howard, the fifth, Riley Leonard, Quinn Ewers, Kyle McCord, Curtis Rourke, Mac Brosmer, Tyler Shuck, Graham Mertz, and then Jackson Dart as their number 202 prospect.
Jackson Dart
Is that
that
number,
far down?
number 13 quarterback, I believe, or 12 quarterback? So that just shows you the level of variation we have today on the quarterback position.
It's lying season.
Speaking of variation, the thing that I'm most excited to get are its measurements on all of these players. Because because you guys are Vols fans, you would know better than most that Omar Norman Law is not 6'5". Right, no one would confuse him with being 6'5", but depending on which draft analysis website you look at, I've seen him listed at 6'1", I've seen him listed at 6'5", I've seen him listed at 6'3". So I would like a definitive answer on all heights, weights, ages of anyone that we can get. Because
what?
6'5", yeah, no way.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The dude would, on what planet would you think that he was 6'5"?
So because he weighed in the Senior Bowl yesterday, and he measured in at 6'1" and 7/8".
Okay, so PFF has him at 6'3". So like that's
a big difference.
Big difference. So that's what I'm looking for, most forward to out of the Senior Bowl, Shrine Bowl, all that stuff. Let's go ahead and get some measurements, some weights, some ages out of these players.
Also, Kenny Pickett said he grew his hand size from the first time he measured to the combine.
A little bit.
Wow. You got,
man, if you could just grow your hand size.
That's what I'm telling you. Yeah, figure it out. Get some stretches. There has to be a stretch that helps you out with that.
That's what it was, he said.
Emmett on YouTube says Cam Rising is 25 or 26. He will be the last COVID-era quarterback. Cam Rising is not going to the NFL.
Dude, Cam Rising needs to sit his butt down and retire.
Cam Rising's not even good enough to go to the UFL, respectfully. Cam Rising, get ready to learn European football,
He's
buddy.
coming back.
I know.
It's unreal.
I know.
You are not going to be healthy.
You're not that guy, pal.
Admit
it. He's just not. So in terms of talking about COVID quarterbacks who are NFL prospects, Cam Rising is not an NFL prospect. He's barely even a Utah prospect. Coming up, Richard Hendrix is going to join us, former Alabama basketball player, now SEC network analyst. We'll talk some SEC hoops with him after this. RKW continues at 104.5 The Zone this morning in hour number 4 with Kayla Anderson. I'm Will Bowling. As we are joined this morning by SEC Network's Richard Hendrix, former Alabama basketball player and friend of the program here this morning. Richard, what's up, man? How are you?
Thank y'all for having me.
Absolutely. I got to start here, man, because first of all, I want to give you your flowers because I remember meeting you. We met you as a show a couple of years ago over at Gaylord for a golf tournament, and met you, talk with you. Oh, listen to the show. From Nashville, or live in the area. All these things, dude. You're crushing it, man. It is so much fun to watch your career take off. SEC Network doing games with ESPN. It has been a joy to watch you grow, man. Enjoying it.
Well, I appreciate it. It's a lot of fun. After playing the game for a long time and now get to be on the sideline and watch these high-level athletes do their thing. I enjoyed it, and I hope to bring that type of insight to the viewer where they can enjoy it just as much as I do.
Can I add one more thing, Will? Because he played at Alabama. I just realized, Richard, that I covered you in my baby broadcasting debut. And you were there. You actually overlapped with Jermichael Green at some point that I covered smack dab in Montgomery. So this is a really cool moment to realize, man, it is a small world in sports.
It is. It's funny. Now that I'm on the other side, I run into people, and I can remember when they covered me back in the day. And to me, it seems like yesterday, but you look back and you find out this is like 20 years ago. It's a lot of fun to see that things are coming full circle.
I love it. Richard Hendrix of SEC Network with us. Richard, let's start just from the conference-wide perspective. 10 ranked teams and a bunch of teams that have really surprised us in the media locally. Vanderbilt, I know you've watched a good bit this season, but as you take a look at the conference as a whole, how many teams are national championship contenders right now in the SEC that you could see cutting down the nets in March?
Oh, wow. National championship contenders. I do think it's probably only about 4 that are national championship contenders. And I'd have to start with Auburn, mainly because they have a big man with Janai Broome who can play in the post and command a double team. They can play multiple styles up tempo. They can slow it down and be physical. So they have to lead the way. I would go also with Tennessee. Tennessee, with the physicality in which that they play defense, that will travel everywhere that they play. And when you're talking about, winning 6 games on 3 weekends in March, you have to be able to sustain in environments where it's tough to shoot basketballs, you can't make shots, but if you have the ability to just strangle teams like they can and not allow you to get buckets, then you have a chance to win games. Alabama's offensive firepower is something that can run any team out of the gym when they're going. If they can guard, then they really have a significant chance of being able to be there in the end in the SEC. And, I would also have to lean with Florida. I think Florida is a team that's built similar to Auburn. They have an inside presence with Alex Condon. They have 2 elite-level guards, Walter Clayton Jr. and Elijah, I forget his last name right now, but he's a really good player. And what he's able to do on the perimeter from 2 ways, 2 sides of the ball. I mean, it's really good at what they're able to do. So I look at those 4 teams, and Kentucky would be the last one that has a chance. Their offensive power that they're able to do with 5 out on the perimeter, moving the ball around. And if they get into flowing within their sets, they're tough to start. But I would start with those 4, and then I think Kentucky would be the next that definitely has a chance.
Elijah Martin, the guy you're thinking of, by the way.
Elijah Martin.
100%.
I've seen so many games. You know how it
Man,
goes.
I don't blame you at all. Kentucky and Tennessee tonight. What is Kentucky's pathway to pulling off the upset? A little bit shorthanded tonight in Knoxville, and a fun contrast to styles between their offense and Tennessee's defense.
Well, I think they get it done. I do think that tonight, being at home and having some tough games, being battle-tested, seeing what they were able to do against Auburn, with, quite frankly, had the opportunity to win that game coming down to the last minute. This is a team that knows there's a sense of urgency to get a win, and they need it, and this is an opportunity with Kentucky coming in shorthanded that I believe they can do so. Kentucky's strength is that they play so connected. I don't know if they necessarily have one player who can take over the game, but they move the ball really well in the half-court set. They read the defense extremely well to make good decisions and passes and it's predicated off the big man who's in the middle of the court. You'll see him at the top of the key. He has to make a lot of reads, backdoor passes. They screen well. They do a lot of different actions. But the physicality that Tennessee will play with will disrupt a lot of that timing. And if Kentucky doesn't have their players that they expected, particularly Lamont Butler, who's the point guard and can organize things, I think it can be difficult. But it should be a good game because this is a opportunity for both teams to be in need of a big win to stay in the pace in the SEC.
Richard Hendrix of the SEC Network joining us this morning on RKW. What do you make of a guy like Rick Barnes, who is an older coach, and nowadays we see so many of these programs hiring younger coaches that connect with the players on a different level. But when you look at Rick Barnes, he kind of has the old school mentality, but still can do that in terms of connection. How rare is that in this day and age?
Oh, it's extremely rare because a lot of coaches don't have the flexibility to adjust. And there's a lot that goes on to it nowadays with the transfer portal and players leaving your program. But he's done a really good job of building a culture where guys like to stay in his program. He has a really good job of having a good eye for getting in the portal and adding the pieces that he needs. Now, if you watch him when he coaches and conducts his practices, he may be better than other coaches, does a really good job of allowing his assistant coaches to work. They do a really good job of delegating responsibility and trusting what they can do. And then he's able to jump in and give his input where it's needed. And then when the game time comes, you see the big adjustments as he's able to make, as he's always made in his career, which makes him one of the best coaches in the game. But the ability to adapt and embrace the current state of college basketball is a remarkable skill, and he's still doing it at a high level, and Tennessee has a good one.
Richard Hendrix, former Alabama player, also now on the SEC Network, sharing his knowledge. So let's, kind of take you back for a moment. When you played in the SEC, fast forward to now, what an upgrade the conference is as a whole. I think it's the strongest conference in terms of basketball in the country. How has it become that?
Well, I think it starts with the SEC and making the emphasis that they want to improve basketball from top to bottom. Now, I do believe that in my time in the SEC in 05 through 08, we had two national champions in Tennessee back-to-back.
True.
LSU in my freshman year went to the Final Four. Tennessee in Bruce Pearl's first year was a top 10 caliber team. And we had 7 teams in 2005 that went to the NCAA tournament and won on the first day, if I'm not mistaken. So the conference has always been strong. But I do believe that what you see now is every team is good. And because of a little bit of the spotlight that you have with ESPN and the SEC Network, you have a little bit more visibility in the league. It's a time where everyone now sees the SEC and the ability that you have to be on the big stage. And high-level recruits want to be a part of that. But I still think with it being as good as it is, good players, good coaches, players going to the NBA and being high NBA draft picks, now is the time that the conference has to step up and get a national championship. The drought has been too long, and you have really good teams. And if you want to back up the claim that it's the best league and the best basketball league, you have to get it done and have one at the top of the podium, at the top of the totem pole when it's all over.
Richard Hendrix of the SEC Network with us this morning on Ramon, Kayla, and Will. Richard, talking about your alma mater, Nate Oates sent quite a message by benching Mark Sears in that win over LSU over the weekend. What was your reaction to that, and what kind of reaction do you think he got out of his team and out of his most important player going into a game you'll be on the call for tomorrow against Mississippi State?
Well, for me, I didn't take too much of it. I mean, personally, I understand from a player perspective, every player wants to play. And if you're a player that obviously has, the track record of Mark Sears, you want to continue your statistical contributions. You've been doing it for 5 years. You've scored over 2,500 points. But, at some point in time, coaches have to make a stand and let everyone know that they are continue to run the team. And Alabama's situation is they have depth. They go 10 players deep and 2 at every position. Really, really talented. And Nate Oates has the luxury that he has the ability that he can go into the roster and go deep into the bench and play anyone and still get a win against the LSU team that played Alabama very, very tough. So at some point, I don't know if it was necessarily something where you look at how Sears was playing that was did something detrimental to the team or whatnot. But at the same time, you have the luxury that you can go deep into the bench, and I don't read too much into it. I mean, you're trying to win games. Alabama has big goals of trying to win the SEC. They've been favored to win it this year. They're coming off a Final Four, and you have to have everybody locked in to give the maximum effort that's required to try to achieve those goals.
Richard, when you look at Vanderbilt and how Mark Byington has turned things around in such a short amount of time, what impresses you the most about the job that he's done here on West End?
Oh, I mean, so impressed. I think he's definitely put his bid in to be, the SEC Coach of the Year. But to get it done so quickly with so many transfers, it's impressive. Now, if you were to talk to Mark Byington, he's been known as a guy who's been able to turn programs around quickly. He's done it at Georgia Southern. He's done it at James Madison. And here he is at Vanderbilt once again. But his teams play so well as far as being connected. And to do that, to build that chemistry is a challenge to do. But they play well offensively. They move the ball around. Defensively, they play very tough and play very fast, which changes the pace up against a lot of teams. So he has a style that definitely allows his players to be free, and I think that helps them to get it done quickly, because if you're playing at a faster speed, then your players can lean on their instincts and react a little bit better, and he's been able to bring that together, and particularly with two big-time wins back-to-back, in a Memorial Gymnasium, really has things going again at Vanderbilt.
Richard Hendrix joining us this morning on RKW, talking some SEC hoops. So let's go down to Arkansas and Coach Cal with just one SEC win this season. Are we surprised at all just with so much of the rebuild that had to happen here? Or is this kind of, okay, this is what we expected?
Well, I think people would have expected more than one win so far in SEC play. I mean, to start off 1-6, and you're John Calipari, a Hall of Fame coach who's won a national championship and done so much at Kentucky, you would have thought that he would be able to come in and get things done a little bit quicker, particularly now in the transfer portal era where you see a lot of coaches get things done quickly. But, Arkansas has struggled. They don't necessarily have a shooter on the outside that can space the core. They have players who are really good with the ball and try to create. But when teams play within the gaps and make it difficult for them to get to the basket, it's a struggle. Now, they have found something by getting on the offensive glass and trying to get some easy baskets just by using their size and athleticism. But they're going to have to get things shored up on the offensive end to try to get some clean looks. If you watch them, every basket that they get is such a grind to try to get a clean shot. And in the SEC, you have to be able to stretch the court in this season because it's so hard to score against these elite level teams.
Richard, on the way out, between those contenders outside the top four that you mentioned that have broken away a little bit, maybe not standings-wise, but just at the top of the polls, in Tennessee, Alabama, Auburn, and Kentucky, in whatever order you want them, who is that next team you feel like come SEC tournament time is most likely to get hot and make a run? Who outside of that four are you looking at?
Oh, wow. I mean, listen, you really can pick almost any team in the league. Right. I mean, this is the reality. I mean, it's to be respectful to all of the teams. I mean, if you don't name someone, everyone's going to say, oh, how do you leave us off? And I totally get it. But I look at Ole Miss to answer that question. Chris Beard's been to a national championship. He has returning players, Juju Murray, Jalen Brakefield, Matthew Morrell, who have been on his team after one season there. They've shown that they can play elite level defense and take the ball from you and make it very difficult for you to score. They can get things going offensively, hitting shots from the outside and make things tough on teams. So they might not be getting as much fanfare as the top four teams just because those top teams are in the top 10. But Ole Miss is a team that's dangerous. Mississippi State is another team that's dangerous. They have some veteran leadership on that team, and Chris Jans can flat out coach. So, I mean, listen, you can pick your poison, but I'm starting with the two teams in Mississippi to be the teams that are on the outside of the ones that are getting the most recognition to be competitive when you talk about the SEC tournament and moving forward.
I love it. Excellent stuff with Richard Hendrix this morning of the SEC Network. Richard, man, again, we appreciate you, excited for you, and I'm really enjoying watching you work this season with all these great teams that you guys have been able to broadcast. We'll certainly do it again soon, man. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard.
Yes. Thank y'all so much for having me.
Yes, sir. Richard Hendrix with us this morning talking SEC hoops, and I just love that there is enough talent around the league where we can go around the league and talk about so many contenders, Kayla, the way we do in the fall and football season.
That's clutch. And to have a guy like him who, he played at Alabama, but he's at the SEC Network like Slays. Like, you've got to know the ins and outs of this league. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of fun when you can go around and be able to give that information. But you're right with saying, even if they're not the top 4 contenders, I see the Mississippi schools as being 2 that can really elevate themselves if they continue to play good ball.
I love it. Good stuff from Richard Hendrix. Again, you hit that up if you missed any of it on the 104.5 The Zone podcast channel coming up here briefly when the show gets done. Final call for phone calls, 615-737-1045. We'll hit more headlines on the way out where a member of the Jones family stepped in it in Dallas. It's Groundhog Day. We'll dive into that next. Wrapping up the show this morning at RKW 104.5 The Zone. Appreciate Ramon making time for us. He will be with us every day from Mobile. And also appreciate Austin Price, as always, Richard Hendrix. Hit the podcast if you missed any of those conversations. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button for us. It's free to you. It takes about 2 seconds, and it helps us out quite a bit.
What are we at?
We are just shy of 14,000 now.
Woo!
When I originally, it was pre-GM search. Mm-hmm. I made the comment I wanted 15,000 subscribers by the time the Titans made the number 1 overall pick. Well, then they fired the GM, and many of you, droves of you, came to hit the subscribe button. So that's helped us. We're at 13,676. 15,000 well within reach by the draft.
Keep on hitting that.
Well within reach. Would you be surprised if I told you a member of the Jones family said something stupid when it came to the Dallas Cowboys?
That would not shock me.
Would not shock any of us. Stephen Jones this time. Honestly, I would give him the worst quote of Brian Schottenheimer's introductory press conference. So he was talking about the fact that the Cowboys have not been to an NFC championship game in 29 years, which now that the Commanders have made one, gives them the longest drought in the NFC, which is crazy. He said, quote, "You always have to evaluate where it didn't go right last year. And obviously we're also evaluating where it didn't go right in terms of this," that he makes air quotes, "drought that people say we're in terms of a championship game or a Super Bowl." Steven, buddy, you do air quotes about things that aren't necessarily real. There is no air quotes about 29 years without a conference title appearance. That's just in quotes. I don't think Jerry or Steven know what air quotes mean in this. And Cowboys fans understandably very upset about it.
Yeah, that's definitely a good way to look at it. If you don't know, that's the rule on that. He clearly did not know, because that is the definition of a drought. Would you say 29 years?
29 years.
Since a championship AFC?
I have never in my lifetime
NFC?
seen the Dallas Cowboys play in an NFC championship game.
That's wild to think that all these teams, the talent they've had on them, the coaches that they've been through, and not one has reached the NFC championship. Oof.
He also got dunked on in the press conference by the media yesterday when they were introduced. I could play this for you real quick.
Okay.
Our new Dallas Cowboys head coach, Brian Schottenheimer.
Hey, congratulations. Happy to have you here.
And Chief Operating Officer, Executive Vice President of Player Personnel, and co-owner, Stephen Jones.
Oh, no.
Brian Schottenheimer had to start clapping for him because nobody wanted to clap for him.
That is so awkward.
Oh, no.
Oh, my God. I want to see that now. I've got to go. Is there a clip on it I can go watch?
You know what he looks like, if I could be mean and nasty for a little bit? Have you guys seen Dune? He looks like the dude off Dune who's in the bathtub smoking the long pipe. Like, he just looks like he kind of like his neck blew a bubble, right? Like the back of his knee.
Neck blew a bubble.
like he just does not look like a healthy, real human being.
Dang.
I'm looking at a picture of this right now.
He just doesn't. He looks like he is like a cross between Jabba the Hutt and the naked mole rat from Kim Possible.
So
he does not look like a real person.
So you have him and then Liam Cohen in another presser that just went down the gutter. He looks like a cartoon character off of the Cartoon Network. Like, what is that guy, too? Oh, God. People did not win pressers.
It is hard to lose a presser, but they made it look easy.
2 in 1 day.
That is wild. Oh, also there was the glory holes comment too.
Oh God! Like what are we doing?
Yeah,
man?
apparently there's an oil reference to that is different than maybe the other reference to it. So anyway, that was Dallas this week, and that's Dallas.
And that's Dallas for you in a nutshell.
Oh my gosh, I am convinced though the Jags just exist to make other AFC South teams feel better about their lives.
I'm okay with it.
Like, honestly, if Jacksonville didn't exist as an NFL franchise, how much more sad would we be about the Titans? Probably very.
Yeah. But at this point, we don't have to worry about them being the bottom laughing stock.
Right.
You know? And that's a good thing.
Totally. Totally.
I feel bad for our friend Mia O'Brien over there that covers the Jags.
She does a great job, too.
She does. She really does.
Friend of the program.
Yep.
But you just have to cover Jacksonville. Are you into betting trends in terms of colors in the Super Bowl?
Okay. Gatorade?
No, jersey colors. So the Super Bowl jerseys have been set. The Chiefs will wear white jerseys. In the last 20 Super Bowls, the team that wears white is 16-4.
Really? Is that why they picked it?
I don't know. I don't know who does pick that?
Who does pick it?
Good
They just
question.
flip the coin?
I don't know.
16-4, huh?
16-4 in their last 20.
Well, that doesn't help the odds that they're going to lose.
No, it does not. It absolutely does not.
So
Alex
apparently-
Gold was the one that put that out, the
Okay.
Kansas City radio host we had on the show last week.
The home team and the away team alternate on contrasting jerseys. So I guess the NFC had home, or whichever one it is. If those are the home jersey for the Chiefs, the NFC got home last year.
So great. They luck out again.
Yeah, right.
Honestly.
We can't get away from it.
Honestly. I know. I still can't believe the amount of people that say they're just not going to watch it. Like, you've got to really be hurt to not watch the Super Bowl.
I mean, Bert's one of those people.
Yeah, I am.
You're gonna watch. Yes, you are. No, stop it. You are going to. You're hurt, but you're hurt. Walsh.
He's hurt Bert.
Hurt Walsh.
You're right.
Hurt Bert.
You're gonna watch it.
I'm not going to watch it intently. I'm not going to go out of
so
my
you're gonna
way.
watch it.
Right.
I'm going to watch pieces. I'll watch the anthem. I'll watch what the first play is because I always bet on, is the first play a pass or a run? How long does the anthem go? What color's the Gatorade?
If you were someone you know has a gambling problem, call the Tennessee Red Line 1-888-99789.
I need to know those things. I don't need to know who wins. I don't need to know who's leading at halftime, and I don't need to know whose receptions are over. I don't need any of that. I'm just going to bet on all the goofy stuff and have fun, eat a bunch of food and fall asleep and come to work the next day, hang out with you guys.
That sounds like a plan. I'll give you a pass for that because I think you were really hurt by not being able to propose to Cheyenne this year.
Yeah, that's what I'm really hurt about.
Right.
That's what I'm really hurt about. Cheyenne was like, "Did they give out rings at the Pro Bowl?" I was like, "Nope." You want to be a Pro Bowl girlfriend? That's what you are right now. You're a Pro Bowl girlfriend. Come on.
Saw yesterday, former Titan Jonnu Smith voted as the Travis Kelce replacement
Dude,
on the
I'm
AFC Pro Bowl.
Pumped about that. Jonnu Smith deserves that. He was a wrecking ball down there this year.
He is in the perfect fit for him.
He really is.
And his skill set, no doubt. Coming up tomorrow morning, we'll have Ramon Foster and Rhett Bryan both from Mobile. So we'll catch up with them on Senior Bowl Day 1. React to Tennessee, Kentucky. I think Tennessee gets the win tonight.
I think so. I think defend home court.
Vols win and cover. Give me Tennessee by double digits tonight. We will react to all of that and more tomorrow morning, 6 to 10, here at RKW. The Buck Rising Show coming up next on 104.5 The Zone.